The majority of businesses that have business problems ignore the business side of things, right? The second you hire people, it's like having a kid. You are no longer in control of your time in life.
You have to trust one another. If you don't trust where this operation's going and the people that you're doing it with, it's never going to work.
It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. All right, guys, we're back with another episode of Table Talk. I have Joe and Dan back from the Varsity House. They were on podcast 323. We're going to be talking about business and the strength world and the gym world. And to put a little bit of context into this, you guys are, I believe, 1 year away from 20 years.
Yeah.
And so I looked this up last night. We already know the stats as far as businesses and failures,
sure,
right? So most fail, 50% fail within the first 5 years. According to the Bureau of Statistics, about 20% of small businesses fail in the first year. Roughly 50% fall by year 5. By year 10, 60 to 70% fall. When you get into the year 20, you're dealing with like 85%. When you're dealing with gym businesses specifically, there's other things that play into that, such as high fixed costs, leases, equipment, insurance, staffing, shifting trends, which you've seen, can kill a gym business. For an example, in CrossFit was at its popularity. It was just wiping out other businesses left and right. That would be probably the biggest trend that went through that kind of crushed things. The churn rate is still a difficult thing to kind of manage. And at least we forget the pandemic, having to manage that. And so the best I could get, GPT, right, prompting all that is about 10% of gym businesses will make it 20 years, which puts you in a category that's ridiculous. Right. So across the board, just looking at
it's weird to think about it when you say it like that. It's, I don't know. I mean, I never show up every day thinking about that. I mean, Dan and I think of just, I don't know. We made a commitment to each other. We made a commitment to a brand. We made a commitment to a bunch of people, our families, our wives. It's like, and we just keep showing up every day. And, of course, like every business, we've had a boatload of problems, issues, things that had to get fixed. And I think we've just been super committed to each other.
We still do.
Yeah, we still do. Tons of stuff. Yeah. Tons of stuff.
We were talking about it at dinner last night, and, we're over on the wall, just like, you being in a space like this, it just sparks creativity. We don't have anything in our gym that symbolizes that we started in 2006. Almost nothing.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I don't really ever think about it because...
Well, you can't because
we don't.
Other stuff, some of the components that kind of played into, the GPT is survivors often have. I should have expanded on this one, Mike, but these are a lot of the things that we talked about in the first podcast, a loyal community or niche, the owner-led leadership who adapt over time, keyword,
that's
adapt
a big one,
over time, and a small brand identity that diversifies revenue. So it's not just the gym memberships, it's coaching, it's the mentoring, it's all those other factors that kind of play into that. Where on the first episode, we covered a lot of ground, but we didn't go deep really into much of them. And you have an event coming up. I scrolled too far. And when is the event?
September 18, 19.
And that's dealing with, interns and basically building the staff. And we'll get to that later, where let's start with the gym owners today, the biggest pain points that they have, because a lot of them are doing everything.
Sure.
Right. So before we get to the pain points, I think it'd be best just to start with what metrics should they actually be concerned with? Because we all should be past the days of keeping receipts in a shoebox.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, most people are still kind of like that.
Yeah.
So even when we jump to say they should know how to read their profit and loss statement, we're making this big assumption that they even have one.
Correct.
Because it just may come out at the end of the year when their accountant gives it to them. So with the gym owners that you're dealing with that aren't even at that phase yet, where do you start them?
So the first thing, obviously, I mean, now today technology is so much easier than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago when I started. And so, now there's really no reason not to start your business right away with a POS system, with a point of sale system, right? So that's like your simplest, point of sale, credit cards, all your sales go through there, all your scheduling goes through there, and you can run data reports on that based on revenue by service, revenue by coach, things like that. So starting right off the bat to extrapolate some data points, in terms of your revenue, knowing what your burn rate is, obviously every month, those are critical numbers. So you know that, hey, with payroll, expenses, equipment, supplies, everything like that, we're going to spend whatever, $5,000 a month. That's my break-even point. I have to know then I have to have a mark above that.
Yeah, but how many that are first reaching out
have that?
Have that because they're going to know their rent. I mean, they know the big ones.
Yeah.
But they're not going to know how much the toilet paper and, other essentials cost per month.
Most of them don't. So it's just sitting down and kind of going through the expenses. If you have, obviously you're going to see it going. Right. You're going to see it going out of a credit card.
Exactly.
I mean, again, like almost everything's on credit card now. So you can go through that and itemize that, but you can get pretty close to it, simply just by looking at a 3-month trend and be like, hey, this is what we spent over the last 3 months. That's going to be a pretty accurate assumption, other than maybe like that first startup phase where you're buying all the new equipment and stuff. But once you're settled in and you're up and running, run for 3 months, do a deep dive on the accounting. You should have a bookkeeper, right? And or an accountant. Bookkeeping services are relatively cheap, right? Even if you're just outsourcing it, and get a baseline, right? And then I have a number, and then it's like, okay, great. But for me, where I always start people, the first place I start people, the first question I ask every gym owner who calls us and wants consulting, I said, well, the first question is, how much do you want to make personally? What's the number that you go home with, that you're excited about, and that your wife and kids are excited about, right? And a lot of times, we've had, if I could just make 50,000, I'm like, brother, I'm not helping you if that's your number, because it's too low. That's not enough money to get me excited, and you shouldn't be in business if all you want to do is make 50 grand, right? So
now, when you say that, are you saying personally or for
personally?
The business?
Like that's their personal.
So that would be their salary.
It's like, well, what the hell are you taking all this risk? You're going to hire employees. You're going to deal with all these customers. You're going to put your name on a lease for $50,000 a year. Get the hell out of here. So I always tell them it's got to be at least $100K. And let's just assume for the sake of this argument that it's $100K, and you're going to be the owner operator, and you're going to be one of the head coaches. You're going to be the morning coach. Let's say you're going to coach all the morning sessions. Then you can do sales, marketing, leadership in the midday and afternoon, right? Maybe you got two other employees. You got another full-timer or 2 part-timers, whatever it's going to be, right? Once you know you want to make $100,000, let's assume that you run a relatively stable, smart business. We're going to do about 30% profit in that owner-operated business. That number might go up or down depending on how many employees you have, the type of business, how much you charge. If you're not going to coach anybody, that number is going to drop. If you're going to coach more, it might go up a little bit. But we'll just start at 30%. Well, that means that company has to do a little over $300K, right, in revenue.
Just for that, though.
To make the $100,000, right?
Just for the payroll. That's not counting fixed expenses, rent, and all the other stuff.
Exactly. So that business has to do over $300K. And then once you know that, you work backwards. Okay, what's the training model and the capacity of the space? Are you doing one-on-one training? You're doing small group training? You're doing classes, right? So depending on what the training model is, I know how many people I can fit in the space effectively every hour. And for us, it's small group, like semi-private personal training, somewhere in the 6 to 8 people to 1 coach range. So let's just say we figure out for us, okay, great. I got 1,500 square feet. My payroll and all my expenses are X. That means that I can fit roughly in our facilities, in our smaller facilities, we look for about 125 members paying $400 a month. Okay, that gets you somewhere in the range of $550 to $600K in overall revenue at 35 to 40% ROI, right? In that range.
Yeah.
So, and
well, if their rent's $10K,
yeah,
it's going to be double that.
Yeah. So exactly. Well, that's why I tell people, like, you have to know your fixed expenses, and your, like, the money that's going out, plus your capacity, plus what you charge, that triangle, winds up being the revenue model.
Where I would look at it as what are the fixed expenses, because you're going to kind of know what those are.
Yep.
Then how many sessions have to happen to pay the fixed expenses.
Exactly.
Right. And then that's kind of where that break even is.
Exactly.
And then, so I always look at expenses before. So
me too. So you would look like, okay, great. Here's all our fixed expenses and what we're going to have. And it's like, okay, our break even point, let's say, is 40 members. And that we know at 40 members, we're no longer losing money on this. And then above and beyond that, we get that extra. For us, it's usually 125 members in that range. Okay, great. So those next, 85 members, that's all profit. Right?
Okay.
That's
now, what if in this scenario, they don't have the time to actually generate the number of sessions that they can do, just hour-wise, because they want to make 100K, right? But it's going to take that, 300K in revenue to be able to cover the expenses. Mm-hmm. And then that 100K is going to take 80 billable hours per week. So they will be able to do it.
When you talk about metrics, like one of the first things that I wrote down, if somebody's listening to this and I'm trying to distill down and make it as simple as possible. And you take, if this person's training, if you're a trainer in a space or you have a gym and you're operating, the first question I'm going to ask is, okay, Dave, what's your total revenue? Like, because people usually know how much is hitting the bank account every single month. And then I would ask you, how many members do you have? Because usually people, I hope you know how many members you got.
You're pretty good there.
So now you go revenue divided by amount of members that you got. And now you have your price per client.
Yeah.
And like most people, if you ask, we were talking last night at dinner, you're talking about how many orders per day. Like your numbers like the back of your hand, but most coaches will avoid that conversation, but it's not a hard one. Mm-hmm. How much money is hitting the bank account every month before expenses? Because this is number one, right?
Yeah.
And then divide it by the amount of customers that you have. And that's telling us real time how much these people are paying you per month. And then we could titrate up or down what needs to happen to your question of, well, how many hours do we need to do? Or is it just like, I think the initial party trick here is, can you charge $5 more per session to get you a little bit closer to that? And most people, especially in our industry, you've got room on the price sheet. You do. In a service, if you got people that like coming to you, if you raise your rate a couple bucks a session, where are people going? It's just, it's hard in this relationship-driven business to do that. But, you look at the standard rate of inflation in the last 5 years, we could ask GPT what that is. It's probably over 20%. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times you'll speak to a gym owner and be like, hey, when was the last time you raised your prices? And they're like, I've never raised my prices.
Yeah. I've seen that a lot.
I think once you have, I think again, it is, to Dan's point, it's easy to know total gross revenue, how many clients, what your average client monthly, payment is.
Start
and then
there.
Where that is, right? But one of the things that we really help people with is the capacity numbers, because I think here's the reason why a lot of gym owners get pinched on when they start hiring employees. Running my business was very easy when it was just me by myself, right? Because I everything I did, I kept and killed. But in a sense, everything I killed, I kept. If I wanted to do more sessions, I did them, right? So if I wanted to work all day Sunday, I did it, and I didn't have to pay anybody but myself. That was all profit. Every hour I did was money in Joe's pocket, right? So if I did 40 sessions, I made X. If I did 50, I made X plus Y, right?
Yeah.
Once you start hiring employees, I think what a lot of gym owners do is, because they hired somebody, they get very excited that they have this other person. And now I'm going to open up a bigger schedule. I'm going to put this person in all these things, right? So they have a lot of classes or a lot of sessions on the schedule that are under capacity or under full, right? So let's just say you're running a group model. Like our business is a combination of semi-private training and then like sports performance, like group training and so forth, right? So some of those sports performance sessions, let's say you got 10 kids, but you have 3 coaches staff. Well, that's a losing session, right? That's a bad dollar session. So, and we see so many gyms doing that. I have 35 scheduled, classes or semi-private schedule on the schedule, but only I'm under 50% capacity on all of them. Well, I was like, well, that's a terrible number, right? Because that means you have half of your classes have like crickets in them, right? There's like, it's a capacity of 8, you got 3 or 4 people showing up. That's bad, right? You're better off having less classes that are packed full, vibrant, and fun, right? Where people are like excited to be in a group with training people. you know, as a world-class strength athlete, your training partners are everything. When you had a great group of people and everybody was there for a squat session, the energy is off the chain. Mm-hmm. If you show up and it's just me and you one day, it might not be the same. It's like maybe a little under energy, a little dull, right? So we'd rather have high energy, high volume, great sessions happening, have 10 of those on the schedule, and build as we grow, right? When there's wait list and capacity issues, right? When you start getting above the 75% capacity mark on classes, that's when you generally know that it's time to probably add some more classes. So when we start seeing we're above 75% capacity across the board, okay, that's when we're like, all right, where people are having issues booking into classes. A vast majority of our classes are full or have wait list or have somebody on the wait list. We probably need to open up a Tuesday, Thursday afternoon class, or a Tuesday, like I said, a lot of gyms, maybe, 6 a.m. is a busy time. We usually do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but it's like, hey, we're getting to a point where capacity is really high on those. So we're looking at opening up a Tuesday, Thursday morning class at 6 a.m. for our adults, right? So, but there's a marker, right? Under 50%, hell no. Over 75%, we probably got to open up another class.
I think most of the gym owners that I know, it would be a step back from that. What basically the model that they're working for is the membership base is covering the fixed expenses, and they'll do their own training, which ends up being their salary. Yeah. Right. So then they contemplate, do I bring somebody else in? Then if I bring somebody else in, if I give them a salary, it's going to pull from, they're going to have to use their personal training money to be able to pay that salary, to be able to cover that person, or that person's just going to be commission only, which can have issues with that, or they just rent. So those are the three type of models that I see. It's like, well, I'll just have a trainer that can rent the space while they're there, which is great for the trainer if it's a small rent and they have 50 clients. Yeah. So they have a hard time kind of navigating which model to work from. And I'm sure there's pros and cons from all of them. But the one model to where if it's salary, then the issue becomes when that starts to get full, the person starts thinking, wait a minute, I can go and do this on my own, because the percentage might be 40% or whatever it's going to be. Oh, I could get 100%, not realizing that there's fixed expenses and all the other stuff.
Yeah. Dan, you could talk to this. Obviously our model's always been salaried. Now we have lots of incentives and we have lots of opportunities for our employees to make more money, bonuses, and we do allow them to keep and kill some of their one-on-one personal training and stuff too. So there's a variety of ways to make money. But I think our goal has always been to build a brand, to build a company, right? And to give a great career trajectory to people and give them the security that they don't have in some of those other models, Dave, where you are 1099. Let's say I'm just using this as a 1099 trainer here at Elite FTS. You charge me $1,000 a month rent. I can come and use the facility whenever I want to train people, right? That's a great model. But just like, Coach Joe 2006, right? If I want to take a vacation with my family and I don't train anybody that week, there's $0 coming in, but I still got to pay Dave his $1,000 a month rent at the end of that month, right? So, obviously having paid time off, having a 401k, having health benefit stipends and things like that, having a team of people around you, giving them, in a sense, having that like camaraderie and a place where you come to every day with a group of people who are excited about a mission, a goal, right? And we're all kind of traveling, like channeling our energy towards something, is a little bit of a different vibe. So, I think a lot of people get into the industry and thinking they're going to open up their own gym, wanting to be that guru trainer and so forth, and then realize how incredibly hard it is to run a business, right?
There's a lot of nuance too if it is a contractor as far as what your own branding is, because you can't tell them what to wear. There's a lot of things.
There is that too, right? Yeah. Exactly. We've never done 1099s in our business. We've never allowed that, right? We've had a few people who've wanted to come in, or they had clients and wanted to bring them over, and they were like, well, can I keep them, separate? And it was like, look, that's not how we do business here. If you're either a Varsity House and you're flying the flag and you're bleeding the colors, or you're not, right? And that's just our method and our way. And I think that you can have a balance where you are paying people a great salary, with an agreed upon workload of time, sessions, management, and so forth. Our goal is to create mini entrepreneurs. So we teach all of our people how to sell, how to market, how to create business within the company and so forth, right? Some of them might have ancillary roles on like social media, on marketing and stuff like that too. So like we have somebody who's like a community manager who helps a lot with the internal marketing, events, client of the month, like client spotlighting and all that kind of stuff, right? Which is an important thing in a brick and mortar business. And she gets paid extra money for that, right? And then we have a deal with our people where like, hey, if you want to take private training sessions in the middle of the day when it's usually dead and nobody wants to work, we're all doing work, or after your shift session, like, so let's say you're on like a 6 to 3 and you want to take a private training session at 3, 4, and 5, we're going to split that with you. We charge about $125 an hour for a private training session. So that 25-year-old kid can make $62.50 for that hour, right? And do 3 sessions, make another $180 that day. Right. So we have multiple coaches who want to make a couple extra bucks, and they're, to the tune of $1,000, $2,000 a month in extra work that they can get to keep, right, on top of their salary, benefits, 401k, stuff like that.
So if I'm understanding correctly, if it is the gym owner that I'm talking about and they actually do want to scale, they're going to have to look into this other revenue stream. Yeah. Because instead of just relying on memberships all the time. Because the memberships can only scale to a certain point.
I would say that depends. And like speaking specifically about the gym owner you're talking about, let me just clarify, like you're talking about open gym memberships and then personal training. So it'd be like a health club type model?
No, it'd be like a hardcore,
like
a smaller gym.
Like lifting club.
And not even that, higher than that.
Okay.
Like a Gold's gym that's not Gold's.
Okay.
Right. So it's something along that framework where the membership, they can grow it to a certain, you can always grow the membership, right?
Yeah.
But the next level up is you're going to grow the membership to the point where you don't want people to show up because realistically they can't, because if everybody showed up, nobody could use anything.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different model. That would be more the commercial model. So it's kind of like right in that small business sector to where the gym memberships are not profiting enough, for the person to say make over 40 grand. Are you a gym owner struggling to build a staff that sells, leads, and sticks around? Then you can't miss this. September 18th and 19th, my friends at the Varsity House are hosting the Business of Strength Retreat at the beautiful Canopy Hotel in Scottsdale, Arizona. The theme this year is Interns to All-Stars, your complete employee development playbook designed for gym owners. You will get the same systems used at Varsity House to turn brand new interns into 6-figure coaches, managers, and even partners. A 10-week intern training program, team alignment and cultural leadership strategies, sales systems that make every coach a closer, a plan to retain and reward your best people for the long haul, their proprietary on-the-job training program, workshops with other world-class gym owners, and a chance to win a $5,000 private consulting package. Plus, you'll hear from elite speakers like Mark Innes, Joe Riggio, Dan Goodman, Devin Gage, and a stacked panel of top gym owners doing this at scale. They will also have a rooftop cocktail party, which will take an already great networking experience and make it even better. They only have 50 seats available. Visit bosretreat.com to register now. Use the code ELITE250 to save $250 as a VIP listener to the Table Talk podcast.
I might change that model then.
Yeah, I would consider
well, they'll start personal training to offset that.
Yeah. So when we say personal training too, like some of the notes I'm writing down, I also, one thing that we will talk about with a gym owner is utilization. Like, okay, how many people do we want? So I'd say, Dave, how many people do we actually want in this gym? Mm-hmm. And then we would focus on, okay, well, this is just straight up a matter of how much service hours are we willing to serve these members, because that will let us know how much we're going to need to outflow in terms of payroll. And then if you tell me you want 200 people, but you want to make X, then the number from these 200 people, we need to value stack it so they're willing to pay $300 a month, $350, $375, whatever the number needs to be. We need to pass the bill along to the client and customer. And, I'm just jotting some stuff down without like trying to confuse people that listen to the show. I mean, if you want to build a personal training program, Joe talked about the number that you serve at one time. It could be 2, it could be 4, it could be 6, 8, 20, it doesn't matter, right? It's just how much value can you build into that specific hour, where if you say, hey, I'm willing to coach 20 hours, Joe, I'm going to hire Joe, he's willing to coach 20 hours, so we got 40 hours we can serve. All right, well, we're willing to train 6 people per hour. That's 240 training slots a week. If the normal usage here is going to be 3, what does that give us? Roughly 80 people we could serve, people being on vacation or out or whatever. Okay, so how much are we going to charge these people? Right, so it could be 80 times 400 in our case, and we're talking about, it could be,
that's 32,000.
32 grand. And now we say, this is an important number, is now it's understanding that you have to have a hard line on your salary cap. Dave, you can't overspend 35%, no matter what we're charging. You got 35. So what's 35% of 32 grand or 30 grand?
Roughly 35% of about 14,000.
Is it
in that range? 13,000, yeah.
Whatever that number is, that's the number that you got. So if you need to make more for yourself, you pay Joe less. If you need to have a videographer in the gym, if you need to have an admin helping you, that's all part of that sum. But something that we've done is we're very open book. We let our team know, hey, depending on, with commissions and things, but we're 30 to 40% up or down. We can't exceed 40%, because if we do, there's going to be so it's 11,200. Thanks, Joe. But if we do for too long, something else is going to be miscalculated. We might fall behind on, we might run up credit card debt. It's not going to happen in a month. It's going to happen in 15 months. So our team is we're very aware, because if they're not, people are going to start telling themselves those stories in their head, like, Dave's screwing me over. He's not paying me what I should. And it's like, it has nothing to do with you, Dan. This is how we run this organization. And if we want to make more, we absolutely can. Well, can we go from 40 sessions to 44 sessions? And can we go from charging 400 to 415? Because now that number is moving along here. So I would say it starts with, I know a lot of, hardcore lifters listen here. You're starting with the end in mind. You got to know, okay, what is the total we're trying to hit, and how long do we have to get there? It's the same thing in business. The two biggest things, it's revenue, price per client, and then utilization. Everything works off of, everything works off of that.
And also to clarify, like we run all of our gyms are personal training coaching gyms, right? Yeah. So when we say memberships, it's a membership for a coached session, right? And we charge a monthly fee for that. Only one-on-one training sessions are charged by the session. Everything else is a monthly EFT membership. So whether you're coming to a group session, which is what we call VFit, which is like a group training class that is coached by a coach that has progressions and regressions, that's well thought out, or you're coming to an actual semi-private strength and conditioning session, those are based on memberships. Whether you're training 2 times a week, 3 times a week, 4 times a week, we sell a membership that scales. One-on-one training is sold as a package, right? And that's used as you come in. So Dave comes in, every time you come in, that gets checked off your revenue, right? For gyms that are selling actual like open gym memberships, right? Well, then you're also looking at, okay, how many memberships can I sell before I have no capacity to do personal training, because the membership base is so large that I don't have a lot of equipment? Or do I have a second, like a secondary area that I'm using just for personal training? If that's the case, which is, there's a few gyms that we've worked with that are similar to that, where they have like kind of like a regular gym membership model, and then an area where all the personal training happens. And you almost want to run that like a separate business, right? And where it's like, hey, in this space, let's just say that space inside of a larger gym is 1,000 square feet or 1,500 square feet. What's the training model? How many people can we fit in there? What do we charge per session? And I would just scale that out on your P&L or on your QuickBooks, right? And almost run it like its own separate thing.
Well, the ones I'm thinking about would be the ones that they've had a gym for 10 years. And they're putting in 60, 70 hours a week. They're really not making anything, but they'll all say the same thing, that I never really got into this to make money.
Bullshit.
Right. And it's, and sometimes they'll have another job, to be able to pay all the bills. Where when I look at that, they have the opportunity to be able to do what you're talking about because they don't have this giant inflow.
Yeah.
I'll train in a lot of these gyms. You can go in there, but it's hardly ever busy anytime you go in there. And if it is, it's like 15 people. It's not a lot. Where the opportunity for them to be able to, that's what I'm saying, for them to be they're not going to scale doing what they've been doing.
Yeah.
Because they're already not making any money. They're staying afloat. I mean, they're staying around, but they're not actually making any money. But they have the space, they have the capacity. They just don't have the knowledge to know what to do. And so they'll dabble in, I'll let this trainer come in and rant, and then they don't stay long.
And that tends to be, I mean, look, I've worked in a few gyms that are 1099 gyms where they got a lot of people just coming and going and doing whatever. It's hard to build any type of great culture, right? And that would almost be like, imagine you just had like all temp employees here and like everybody just kind of came and gone and did their thing, right? It's really hard to build a great culture, right? And like I've been here a bunch of times now, and it's the same people. I'm here every time. Right? You've had a very consistent crew of people here, so you guys can build a great culture. It's the same thing at Varsity House. The culture is the people, right? It's values times action equals culture, right? So you got a great group of people with similar values who take action every day, and you've stuck together long enough to really make something out of this business, and that's your culture, right? It was the same thing with us. We had a group of people who have been with us for a very long time, some of them since day one, right? And that really becomes the culture. So, for a lot of the people who are like looking like, what do I do with this model? It's like we always try to push people to the semi-private model. One-on-one is not a bad model. There's nothing wrong with that. But if that's your only model, again, you're directly trading time for money.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we know, and I've done it and I'm guilty as charged, and so's Dan, where like, if Dave's been training with me for a long time and he's a great client, and he calls me the morning of his training session 2 hours before his 8 a.m. session, he texts me at 6 in the morning, hey, I can't make it today. No problem, Dave. Let me know when you're coming again, right? And I'm not beating Dave for $125 that day, because Dave has been here for 10 years and spent thousands of dollars, right? That shit happens all day, every day, right?
It happens daily.
It happens daily, right? So going to a semi-private model, now, I got Dave, Dan, and Matt in a group. It's like, all right, hey, Dave's out. Great. I'm still making money today. So we're trying to get somewhere in the range of $250 to $350 an hour on our semi-private training sessions. You're not, unless you're, I don't know, Gunnar Peterson, right? And you're training, and you're, one of the gurus, right? Is anybody charging $250, $300 an hour for a one-on-one training session? So the reality is that it's a safer, reduces risk. Think of it just like diversifying your income streams here as a company, right? Having a semi-private model is diversifying your income streams, because now I have the income from 6 to 8 people coming per hour instead of that one, right?
It also does two things. One, it insulates the business, because now we were talking about training crews before. You have a training crew that, it depends on who the coach and who the leader is, but it's less dependent on that person, and it's as much dependent on the other people and the vibe that's there. When it's one-on-one, it's like, well, if one person's not there, it's not a session. So it insulates the business in case you do have churn of coaching staff. And number two, we've been able to create some fringe benefits that really weren't available when we started offering them, where all of our coaches have paid time off. I'm not talking like sick leave or anything that the state mandates. Like, you have paid vacation, and it's easy for, let's say, me to slide in and coach Joe's crews because they know each other, and I might know them because I've covered, and he can cover for me. It doesn't always work that way with one-on-ones, because if I have a full book of sessions, how can I do your sessions at the same time if they're not conditioned to be working together? So the small group semi-private model is one that's worked exceptionally well for us.
And we try to take on like a team mentality too, where it's not, they're not Dave's clients, they're not Dan's clients, they're VH clients. So all clients who come in get entered into our database and our training platform that we use, right? So it's digitized. We have a Slack feed where all new clients, their client profile updates. So like, I'm just using you as an example, Dave. We got this washed up meathead coming in who's beat up real bad, right? Got shoulder injuries, back injuries, knee injuries, hip injuries, right? And it's like your profile, no sprints for Dave, no overhead presses, no dumbbell snatches, like obviously. So your profile is going to go into there. So we're going to see it. You're going to see all the other coaches on the floor. You're going to wind up taking a fitness class with Dan, even though I might be your direct coach, right? You're going to see all the other coaches on the floor, and you're going to interact with them. So that way, you know, when Dan's away on vacation and I got to take over your training sessions for that week, it's not like the sky is falling. Where in a lot of private training models, when Dan's away, his clients don't want to train with nobody else, right? So, and that, again, those are little details that wind up hurting the cash flow of the business. The most important thing for a small business is consistent revenue generation and cash flow, right? And those types of things where the mysies, as we like to call them, that these are my clients and they don't train, those things kill cash flow, right? If Dan's a busy coach in my business and does 30 to 40 private training sessions a week, and when he goes away on a vacation, none of those people train, I just lost thousands of dollars, right, as a company, as a revenue stream. So it's really important that you have to take this team mentality. And I think we are proving that you can have salaried employees who have the opportunity to earn above and beyond their contract and their agreed upon salary to do extra work, whether that's business work or additional training sessions, make great livings, and have the security of having a great team and a foundational business behind them, right? Again, with the 401ks, the pensions and things like that, and the education stuff. Like, obviously doing stuff like this, we have a Rolodex of people that we are friendly with and that we are willing to pay for education and support for our team. So, you know, again, if somebody said to me, hey, I would really love to go out to elitefts and train and see, like, I think years ago we came out here with our head coach, Mike. Like, Mike's a world-class strength athlete, competed at Worlds, competed at the Arnold, for strongman, right? It's like, hey, Dave, you mind if Mike comes out for a day and shadows and trains and kind of sees some stuff? Okay, great. You know, there's connections there. We're going to send people to workshops and seminars, right? When you're on your own, you're on your own. And then it's always a cost issue, right? And so, like, that trainer who wants to better himself and better his staff, but won't spend a penny on him, on his education, well, that's really where they fall short too. Because in the beginning, you mentioned, you grow as your skills adapt and grow, right? Mm-hmm. Dan and I are completely different humans than we were in 2006, right? Dan, jokingly, Dan was a dipshit college kid. He was going to school playing football, right? His number one goal was being a good football player and where are we drinking this weekend? And I was a fresh, 31 or 32 years old, and I when I started in 06, I was 30, and it was like I was 30 years old. All I want to do is be a great coach. In my head, I'm going to be the next Charles Palquin, and be this great guru, sports performance coach. And the only thing I knew was training X's and O's. I had no idea how to run a business. Fast forward today, we're a completely different skill set, right? And we've spent a lot of time, energy, and money educating ourselves outside the realm of the X's and O's of training, right? To get good at the game of business. Where I think, when you're by yourself, or you're in a small company, or you're one of those 1099s. If you're a 1099 in a building, the likelihood that the owner is going to drop $2,000 to send you to some certification or some workshop is probably a big fat zero, right? But if you're my employee and I've made a commitment to you, it's like, all right, well, now I have an obligation. Dan, for all sense of purposes, was my first employee, right? Even though we became business partners at the beginning of our relationship, we were skewed a little bit, where I owned a larger percentage than Dan did, right? And I was obviously older. I'm 10 years older than Dan. So I said to it was pretty obvious to me. It's like, all right, well, I made a commitment to this guy. We signed a business agreement on a napkin at a bar after 6 beers, right? I said, so we're married now. And so it was my obligation to give him all the skills and abilities that I had, so that, he wasn't I'm going to hire this guy, I'm going to make him my partner, and then I'm going to ignore him, and he's going to, he doesn't know shit, and I'm going to just basically, why don't you know that? Why don't you do that? And that's what a lot of business owners do. So it's like, I hire Dave. Dave's going to be this guru. I give him a piece of paper that tells him what he's supposed to be doing on day one. Then I don't check in on him for 3 months. And then I say, well, why the hell isn't he doing that? Well, you didn't educate him. You didn't train him. You didn't, meet with him. So there's a lot more to running a team. Yes, it's professional human cattle herding, right? You always have to be kind of patting asses, shaking hands, and moving people along, and reminding people what their jobs, duties, responsibilities, and things are, and where the greatest bang for your buck in terms of ROI is. But when you're on your own, it can be a lonely place, right? I was that guy. I was like, I don't know. I don't have a goddamn clue what to do. So it's like, all right, I'm just going to train more people, you know?
Well, if we peel it back to that, and it could be that gym owner we're talking about, or it could be just a sole proprietor that has a sport training facility, which there's a lot of those, right? They want to begin with the end in mind, you know, old Stephen Covey, like old school reading. They got to get that first person, right? And that first person, if I understand correctly, should be salaried, you know, so how are they going to find that first person, and what should they look for? If they're going to keep that end in mind, there has to be a culture. There's the other reality, that first person's probably not going to be there in a few years too.
Yes.
Right. So it's kind of like a temporary first person where they're going to think they're going to be there forever. Maybe they will be, but the odds are stacked highly against them. But they still they don't have the capital to bring in more, right? They have the capital to bring in just that one.
Yep.
Right. And that's actually, it's the easiest jump, but to them, it's the biggest, hardest
jump. It's huge. Well, a lot of times it's just lack of clarity, right? I mean, Dan's our CEO, and Dan does an amazing job of making sure that the day-to-day roles are clearly defined, and that every person in the business knows exactly like what their role is, how much they're getting paid, what the agreement upon work is, what they're supposed to be doing every day, and how to earn above and beyond that. And it's like, let's just say, you know, just round table. This is kind of like a joke, but like I'm holding people, if you can see, but I'm holding up this piece of paper, and this is your contract of work, right? Well, anything that you want that's above and beyond that happens outside here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. We already agreed upon this. I'm going to pay you $60,000 a year to do X amount of sessions, to be this, and this, and do these things and whatever, right? You telling me you want to make 75, okay, great. Well, all those opportunities are out here somewhere, right? So whether that's doing more work, leading other people, taking charge of an internship program, helping out with marketing, doing more on sales, garnering referrals, whatever those things might be. So when you're looking at hiring, for us, it's all about a set of core values, a clear defined mission, and you have to know your economics. I think before you hire anybody, I would highly recommend that you have a baseline financial acuity and you know your economics. We did not do that. We hired before we had any economic ability, and we were in a bad spot.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is too, is like we have we just hired somebody, and it's only in the last 4 or 5 years that we would go to, let's call it the open market, and hire somebody from a lateral position at let's call it a real salary. Most of the people come through our internship process. We have the unique opportunity. Joe's still teaching at Montclair State, so we have 5 or 6 interns every single year. And we will take the best one. That person's not starting at a full-time wage, but we are paying them. This is people could use this. I mean, state by state it could vary, but in the state of New York and New Jersey, we can pay, say, Nick, a guaranteed rate for, hey, we're going to guarantee you 15 hours of work at this amount of money per week. If you go above, cool, just put it on your timesheet. That person is, by all accounts, a salaried person, right? But you're not paying them 70 grand out of the gate. If Nick does well, cool, Nick, you're going from 15 hours to a guaranteed 30. Let's try that for a while. And then we can go to 40 hours. And now Nick's worked his way over a period of time into a job, and he might be somebody. He's a guy on our roster that's been with us less than a year. He's kicking ass.
Yeah.
But he started out as an intern, 10 hours, 20 hours, and now at the completion of this summer, I mean, right now he's full-time.
Yeah. And he's personally far exceeded the expectation of his agreed upon contract.
Right.
Because he wants to make more money. And we gave him a bunch of options and tools to make more money, and he took it and ran. And
but something that you have to remember, like, if you put yourself, I don't think business owners do this enough, putting themselves in the shoes of both their clients and their potential and their team members. What do team members crave? Team members crave consistency and security of their job. Like, when you boil it down, of course, you need to make a certain level of money and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's like what kind of mood is Joe going to be in today? Like, is my job safe? Like, he said he's going to pay me this much, but on my paycheck, it's this much. I thought I was going to be coaching, and I haven't coached 1 hour yet because he keeps getting in the way. Like, it's It is consistency and security. And if you, as a business owner, can provide, like, don't overextend yourself. Say, hey, Dave, I'm bringing you in for 10 hours a week. We're going to find you 10 hours a week. And look, in 1 month, if you're paying somebody $20-$25, like, what are you paying them? You're going to pay them $1,000, $1,500. Like, come on, like, that's on you to get them busy and get them valuable. And like, sometimes there's a little bit of give and take, but overall it's worked out really well for us. And something like, not everybody stays forever, but in my head, like, being a leader in our company is the better players make for better teams. And if somebody's is showing a flash that they're excellent, we're going to do our damnedest to keep them as long as humanly possible and put them in the place to make us money and prioritize the things that really matter. I mean, you look at the first person besides me was Big Mike. Mike's been with us since 2009. Yeah. I know we were talking about it yesterday on a walk. Like, hey, every intention is we're going to make Mike. I know Mike's going to listen to this. We got to make Mike a partner. We got to keep Mike forever. And I think sometimes when you go into it saying, hey, I need to create career opportunities where people could really mature into a role, it starts with don't overextend yourself. And you'll know, like, holy shit, Mike's kicking ass. I got to get Mike more hours because he's in high demand. Well, it's not easy to move it along. If you're a mature business like we are now, it's a little bit more risky if we hire somebody externally for a real salary. But also, I mean, we know what we need now. We know what the job description is. We know what we can afford. And we also know very quickly if the person's going to work or not. Yeah. And I think the one thing before the show started is, like, if you're hearing that, you know right from wrong, right? Real quick in terms of the values and what the person's going to be able to bring to your organization. And if it doesn't look right, or it smells a little funky, it's like, you need to exit that person soon.
Yeah, Dan and I have always been pretty clear on, like, our core values and mission, right? In terms of like the types of people that we wanted to do business with and have in our company. And of course we've missed on a couple. And I would think, like, a lot of times
as does everybody.
As everybody, right? Yeah. But like, but never terribly, right? But the reality is that once you set up your company, your basic numbers. You got to have an idea of some economics, because the economics are going to drive how much you can afford on payroll and stuff like that, and how much you could spend. And again, if you're doing $400K, I'll use round numbers for the sake of meatheads, but like you got $500,000, right? 35%, revenue, right? You basically at 35% of that, you got what's that? $175,000 that you could basically spend. Is that right? Is that right? At half of 35% of 500K, half of 350 grand.
35K for every 100.
Yeah. 350 is 70. Yeah, so 175,000 in payroll that you have for that, right? That's it. That's your salary cap. Otherwise, that business is always going to be teetering on the balance of being unhealthy, right? Once you get up over, you could maybe stretch it to 40 for a period of weeks. Let's say, again, I hired Dave because he's got real high potential and he's a great coach, and we want to take a chance on hiring like a better quality individual, and maybe we'll go over the bar a little bit on payroll. But the goal is to get Dave really busy in the next 6 months, and that payroll goes back down to within that 35% range again, right? And that comes to you becoming a force within the company, getting really busy, right? Mm-hmm. So, but we don't like to stretch it more than that, right? And then again, like when you hire, you're hiring culture, right? Skills are portable. Skills are learnable. I can teach people how to sell. I could teach people to be better trainers, right? I can't teach them. It's hard to teach a 30-year-old person how to be a better person at 30 years old, right? So you really have to know like where your values stand, what type of people you want to do business with. Ask really good questions during interviews. We've gotten much, much better at like our recruiting and hiring processes to weed that out, to really get clear on like, asking them, distinct questions about their work ethic, their compatibility with other employees. And
that's important to mention too. Like right now with our hiring process, every single person is vetted on the phone first by Joe. So like, hey, founder, you're getting on the phone first and foremost.
We do a quick Zoom.
Mm-hmm. Then it goes to in person with 2 to 3 team members, asking a variety of questions to see if this person passes go. And if they pass go, you said it at dinner last night, like, hey, because we're talking about hiring somebody with marketing, like, hey, when they're in the interview, give them the phone and tell them to put together an asset for you right then and there. And we will.
Yeah.
And we'll do the same thing with our coaches, though. Hey, you talk about coaching, you got all these certifications, this degree, cool. You're going to come in on Thursday morning from 6 to 9. Let's see if you could be on time. We're going to preface you and say, hey, this is the people coming in. These are the limitations they've got. You're going to be in rack 2 spotting them up and coaching them up and just see what happens.
Yeah. With, I got 2 things that kind of came into mind with the interview type of thing, with certain positions, because you're going to ask how they solve problems, where they were. That's not a good enough question. I found that you got to ask exactly how they did that. So if it's a certain software you use, like, where did you go in the software? How did you click through? What did you find? Because they might have been part of a team that solved the problem, but they weren't the actual person that did it.
Pressing the button.
Yeah, then you find out real quick they don't know how to use the software that you use. They just know the surface level. But with the skills, this becomes a little bit of a nuance. And what came to my mind when you were talking about the skill acquisition is, it's probably 5 years ago. It was a friend of mine that has a sport training facility, and it was their customer service, or whatever he calls. You got different names for the person that greets people at the door and handles the appointments, and whatever the name was for that, I just call it customer service.
Like liaison.
Yeah, whatever. It's just, it's customer service, right? And what this owner did was purchased an online course, which was an extensive course, and maybe say 30 hours or whatever it was, and reviewed it, as you would. I mean, you're not going to watch the whole thing, but you're going to skim through to be able to see it. And it was a very valuable course, cost a decent amount of money, and presented it, to this person to be able to do it. A couple of weeks later, asked what the progress was, and the reply was, well, I haven't had time, here to be able to do it because we've just been slammed. He was pissed, and his reply back to this person was, look, if I have to take care of your education for your specific skill set of the profession that you're in, and I'm going to pay for it, but then also have to set aside time for you to do it during work hours, then don't ever expect a raise again, because you're not willing to do anything to increase your own skill set for the profession that you have.
Sure.
And I didn't know what I thought about that. I kind of agree with it, because they should be passionate about their own skill set, because skill sets change over time.
Yes.
Right. And if all they're doing is what they're doing in the workflow, they might not have time during that, because they're doing the thing to be able to keep up with what's going on with the thing. And if they don't, then in 5 years, they're obsolete.
So the old school Joe agrees 100%. Like, in my head, it's like, why the fuck aren't you going out and like learning everything you can to be the best that you can be? Because that was always my mentality. I say this all the time, I've said it on the air, but the first time I went to Westside, I slept in my truck because I didn't have money for a hotel room. It was either go out there and train and have money for food, or stay in a hotel room and don't eat, right? So I slept in my truck, right? A lot of people just aren't willing to make those types of sacrifices, right? So the reality is that, yes, I agree that there should be, and again, when you're hiring people, I'm looking for self-starters, and that is part of our question. Like, tell me how you've been a self-starter. What are some things that you've taken by the balls, in a sense, and run with it, right? But there is a reality that you do have to put opportunities in front of people, and I want to make it easy. I also want to make it team-centric and fun. So for us, what we've done is we've centralized a lot of our education by bringing great guest speakers, workshops, and in-services to the gym, right? Obviously, over the 30 years that I've been doing this, we've met a lot of really great people. And so we have people come all the time to do in-services at the gym. Plus, we send people out and we pay people to go to certain things, knowing that those skills are going to come back to the business.
Now, when you do that, so you send them out and they're gone for a weekend, and that's 16 hours.
Yep.
Is that 16 hours they're being paid for? Or is it 16 hours that you're just paying for them to go? Because this is kind of where this person's mindset was.
That's a good question. The way that since our people are salaried people, they're not paid. The accommodation will be paid, the flight, the travel, spending money, but this is for them. And we make that well known, and whatever, the service. And
we don't count it against their PTO or anything like that. Yeah. So if they're missing a Friday, I don't dock them a day of PTO because they missed Friday. It was like, I sent you to something that you're just going.
But there's two things on that too. Like, it's something that we do, and we talk a lot about W-2 salaried people. I want to be very clear. We gamify the shit out of what we do in a quarter. You're dealing with meatheads. You're dealing with mostly competitive people. That's what we're looking for, people that are hungry. So if people don't know the end line, or like if you hired us to come to Elite FTS and we're sales guys, like the first fucking thing you're going to do is say, hey guys, like this is the number. Why would you not do that? Like you want, and hey, this is good, this is better, this is best. And if good happens, you get paid this. Mm-hmm. If better happens, you get paid this. If best happens, holy shit, now we're going to move it again. Same thing's happening in our business in terms of total clients, price per client, membership sold,
attrition numbers,
all of it. So we gamify it all and we prioritize it all. And we let people know, like, hey, if you go out, we go out as a unit, we get a new skill that we're fired up about, then, well, shit, it's going to move us a little bit closer to our goals. So, if you are somebody that is paying people hourly, I would pay the person hourly to go spend 16 hours or whatever it is. But, the big thing, one of the values, I mean, you have it here. It's everywhere. It's live, learn, pass on. For us, it's really like our core values are truly like, we come up spaces like this. We have core values because of businesses like yours. And one of our values is a commitment to excellence. And we let people know day one, the pillar of this is your own education. That's it. And every single week, again, the professional, whatever you want to call it, ass padding, herding, whatever it is, there's a check-in that we do as a unit every single week. What are you learning? Yeah. Every single week, it's education. And it could be, nobody's busting balls. It'd be like, hey, hey, this was a real busy week. I didn't listen to a podcast. In today's day and age, you can listen to a podcast on your way to work every single day. You could read a book for 5 minutes a day. Start with one page and just see where it takes you. It's never just going to be one or two. But once you get in the rhythm, you're going to start learning. It could be a course. It could be the in-service of another guest presenter. But I want to see what people are interested in. I want to see what people are focused on. So then as an organization, maybe we can pay that person to come in and teach them. Maybe we can send them out there. And that yields the fulfillment in the workplace too. But I want to know, there's two sections. Of course, it's a professional win. Like, what are you working on personally? How are you doing? But it's, what are you training this week, or what have you trained this week, and what have you learned this week? Yeah. And that is the constant repetitiveness. It is just created a consistency in our organization where the people that are not training and are not learning, somehow, some way, they will find their way.
Yeah, we do. Dan does that. Dan puts that out every Thursday. The goal is to check in before the weekend's over, right? That's team-wide. It's a mandate, right, that you check in. And Dan and I read every single one of them, right? So I can see where people's headspace are at. And one of the questions is, what's your one thing for next week? Like, what's your big ticket item for next week, right? And I think like clarity precedes action, right? So just being able to see that is really important, to just elaborate a little bit on some of the things that Dan was talking about in terms of gamifying, just to give some more specifics there is, and I think the goal here to wrap this all together, for some of the original questions that you had asked, Dave, was like, salary versus, revenue versus like commission versus 1099s, right?
Dave Tate here from Elite FTS to talk to you about bands. We've been a supplier of bands for almost 2 decades now. So I've known my way around the band landscape. When I'm talking about bands, I'm talking about floss bands, long bands, short bands, bands you can use for resistance training, mobility training, body weight training, and flossing. One of our most popular bands, or actually our most popular bands, are the long bands. The long bands are typically used the most with squats, bench presses. Our floss bands are bands that you wrap around the joint to be able to help with mobility, circulation. And the short bands are designed for shorter range movements, bench press, deadlifts, and a lot of times people will use them with resistance machines to help accommodate the strength resistance curve. Head over to elitefts.com and look for bands in the toolbar or blowout menu.
Salary is a risk. There's no question, right? You don't know what you're getting. We just hired 2 new great employees that we think are going to be awesome. We're going to give them every opportunity to be great. You know, shout out to Tyler and Ariana, who we think are exceptional humans that we're bringing into our organization, right? We agreed upon a salary that is a little bit higher, obviously, than where maybe somebody coming in from an internship and coming in part-time would be, because they have much of experience and they're full-time. They're, you know, expert, you know, at this point they're professional coaches, right? So they're going to come in with that higher salary. So of course there's a little bit of a roll of the dice, saying like, all right, well, if this person doesn't get up to speed, get moving and get valuable within the next 3 months, there's probably going to be an issue. So again, to go backwards, to go forwards there, you got to make sure that those 3 months are very well scripted, that you have an on-the-job training plan, and we're going to meet every week for the first, 60 to 90 days. And we're going to be, up their ass like a puppet in a good way, but just to make sure that they are focused on the things that they need to do to be a valuable employee in the business. And there's a checklist of things. And then I want to give everybody the opportunities to earn above and beyond. So by gamifying, what Dan means is like, here's your salary. That's for basically 40 hours of work. And we agreed upon a contract that you're going to train this many hours. This is your schedule. This is your pay. But I want to reward people for exceptional work, right? For the guy who's high-fiving and smiling in every session. The guy who memorizes everybody's first name by the second week, he's in the building, right? The girl who is there on her very first day, smiling and high-fiving and dabbing everybody up, right? All those little things matter in the culture of a business, right? So it's, your attrition rate. Hey, guys, if we stay under 6%, 5%, whatever that number is for a quarter, we're going to bonus everybody X, right? And now the focus is on customer service because, like, hey, I can make an extra $300 to $500 just for doing my job, for saying hello, saying thank you at the end of his session, calling Dan by his first name. Great job, Dan, by coaching people, right? Being a real coach, but just by doing your job. And we keep that attrition number down, because attrition, people leave because they didn't feel the love, right? They very rarely left because the bathroom was a mess or something like that. It's because they were not engaged with the staff. Another number might be total client roll. Hey, we get to 400 members, everybody's getting this, right? We're doing a challenge right now. We call our 4 Rs challenge, right? So we're doing for the month of June, reactivations, referrals, upgrades, and reviews. And we use a point system, and they get a point for each one of those, right? So let's just say at our big gym, our headquarters, which is our largest facility, the goal is to get 25 points in the month of June. If everybody does the point, if we get the points, everybody gets a couple bucks. The smaller gyms have a point system too. If all 3 gyms hit the number, we get more money.
It's a rally cry.
So it's a rally cry for the month. To do your job, check the boxes, cross the T's, dot the I's, right? It's a reminder of what's important. And we put a couple extra dollars on it a few times a year. So it sparks people's interest into the key metrics of the business that matter a lot to clients, right?
Now, in the real world, that sounds great, but in the real world, you can have a quarter to where all those numbers underperform.
Yes.
And they could underperform to a level that wouldn't allow the capital to even be given in that next quarter where that bonus may have been hit.
Yes.
So how do you financially manage that?
We haven't run into that. Honestly,
we've hit 10 quarters in a row. So
yeah.
I mean, you can insulate yourself though a little bit, where like we've had quarters in certain businesses or certain metrics that weren't hit, and we have moved the goalposts, so to speak, if we felt like we overreached in a big time way, and some of it is just coming out and being like, hey, we fucked this up, and like, you just move it either which way. And, I think just being real with our team, and,
you were pretty open book. I mean, our team knows pretty much every penny that comes in the gym and what we make and everything, right? Other than like posting people's salaries on the wall. In terms of the revenue, cash flow, money in the bank, our management team.
All right. So how do you handle that? Because they don't understand the whole dynamic of the whole business. So you can show what the revenue is.
We teach them.
but the revenue may be a big number, but that doesn't mean that's going in your pocket or the business.
No, we also will silo it. So like when we have a town hall, we'll show a slide of each separate business and like if we're on track or off track. And also in terms of some of the gamification we're talking about, like with the, I want to give a shout out to Devin Gage, who really sparked the idea of the referral and reactivation campaign here. It's not a huge amount of money. So it's money that we could float if we needed to. We're talking about
a couple $100.
We're talking about the max is $325 per person. We have a team of 15. We could cut that check no matter what happens, right?
So it's kind of included in your brain as a fixed expense.
In my head, it's already
may or may not go out.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But you look at it like if you layer bonus opportunities in your company, right? So your salary is your salary. Then you have a work bonus, meaning like, hey, if you want to take private training sessions at these hours and these times above and beyond your agreed upon schedule, we'll split that with you. And now you have the opportunity to earn literally to infinity. Like he mentioned the kid, Nick. Nick's day off is Wednesday. Nick's been in the gym every Wednesday ripping.
He had 8 sessions this Wednesday.
6, 7, 8 sessions.
125 times 8 divided by 2.
Yeah, exactly. So $62, 6 times 8, let's just call it in that realm. He's almost a $500 day for Nick, right? That one day. So here's a kid who's hungry. He's like, look, I'm 23 years old. I don't need a Wednesday off. I'm just going to come work, right? And so he's done that. Then we look at revenue bonus. Anybody who's full time or on our management team is on a quarterly revenue share bonus, right? And that's dollars and cents. That's based on profit and earnings, right? So we have a goal for each month on the gross. We have a goal for each month on profit. And if we exceed the goal, they get bonus, and that bonus number is dependent on their role and the time within the company. So like we mentioned, Big Mike. Big Mike's our longest tenured employee. He has the highest revenue share percentage and the highest opportunity to earn in terms of the bonus pool. Okay. So that's one way. And then we do all these fun little gamify actions in there, right? So we're running a summer shred challenge right now, which is basically like a little mini 4-week transformation. Our community manager Stephanie helped me a lot with this and put together like a great meal plan. She's doing a bunch of like weekly Zoom check-ins with everybody. So she's done work above and beyond the agreed upon, contract. Okay. So we're just spot bonusing. We talked to Steph and we're like, hey Steph, you've exceeded the expectation here. You helped me a ton. You really helped knock this out of the park. We have almost 170 people doing this program. So we crushed it as a business. So I'm going to give you X above and beyond here. So on your next paycheck, you're going to see this bonus, right? And that's how you win people over too. Because look, back in the day, Dave, maybe when me and you were kids, it was a handshake hundo. When I worked for my uncle, we did construction. If I had a really great week and I worked my ass off and my uncle slapped me an extra hundo, in the wad of dough, to a 19-year-old kid, that was a big freaking deal. I was like, oh, shit, yeah, baby, I'm rich this week.
It's gone by the end of the day.
It's gone by that night. A sleeve, a skull, and a 30-pack, and I'm on my way.
I think I have a better answer to where your head's at, because I know you're analytical with your numbers, is that the hard salaries that we're looking at with our unit is we are saving 3 to 5 percentage points knowing that we might over exceed based on commission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we know we're willing to go up to 40%, like top, we can't have a salary structure that is over 35 because we know, hey, if we could have a big, one of these numbers could hit, but it could be like attrition, could be a delayed gratification game where we're not making the money yet. That insulates us a little bit. And from the team member perspective, the hard money, so to speak, it'd be, all right, if somebody's making 80,000 salary, they will have the opportunity to bonus out typically 15 to 20% on top of that based on good, better, best scenario with their specific job. So
and that goes back to having economic acuity, knowing your percentages, being smart with the money, not overextending on payroll, equipment, overhead, right? I can't tell you how many dozens of gym owners I've talked off the ledge of going to a larger facility or starting their first facility with, 5,000, 6,000 square feet. I'm like, you've never run a business before. Why don't we just start with like 2,000 square feet and blow that thing out the park?
You can't go back.
You can't go backwards.
This is every business owner I know.
Yeah.
They'll have surplus capital or revenue.
Yes.
And think that it's going to keep coming after that.
Yes.
And then they spend.
You got to always think like you're like the next dollar is your last dollar.
Yeah, you got to be paranoid.
Yeah.
Because that excess of revenue could be, upgrading the equipment at a later period of time.
Yes.
But you just throw it all out.
Oh, I mean, look, we've made the mistake. We love. This is no secret. We love elite FPS gear. I mean, look, that's not a plug. That's the reality, right? So the truth is,
hitting every machine.
I'm here.
Like,
I'm here. I'm like, we got to get some new shit, right? But the reality is, obviously, it's taken us a long time to build a cash cushion to where we can do that, right? But the reality is, when we started the business, we overextended ourselves many times, and there were times when we did upgrade. We have. In our headquarters right now, we have 6, 7, 8, collegiate racks, right?
Yeah.
So the reality is that at some point we were like, we need new collegiate racks. And we went out and got them from you years ago. We probably at that moment wasn't the best spend on revenue because we were like, we have a couple bucks. Let's get new racks, right? And we went out and bought all new.
What are your thoughts on leasing the equipment? Because I've had some people tell me that's the only way to go.
I mean, we have not done that, but that is the plan going forward. I mean, when we open up new facilities, we spoke to your leasing guy, and we had a great conversation with him, and that's the plan going forward. And again, it's just a cash flow move. Whether you have the money,
that's why I'm asking, because the equipment can be especially
it's
upgrade.
Expensive.
You go from one facility and you're going to a bigger facility. It can be a big cost, but leasing can spread that over. But long term, it's going to cost way more.
Yes.
So that to me, it's like capital dependent.
Yeah, so it is. But again, if you're looking at your revenue model and you understand your numbers, whatever that lease payment's going to be, you just work that into your fixed income, right? So now, and I'm going to adjust my prices and or my capacity to account for that. So it's like, again, we use the number of 125 people paying $400 a month, and that's assuming that we had the cash cushion of we started the business with $150K fund and we opened the business, so that included equipment and whatever, right? But let's just say we didn't have that much capital, so we had to put that into the fixed expense, right? So so now we know that I probably need 135 people in that, or I got to charge, instead of $400 a month, it's got to be $425, right? And that, in order to cover that nut, right, and still make the same numbers in terms of my personal income versus payroll. And look, and I'm not going to say this to all the people because we're talking a lot of single shop owners here, but for the people like Dan and I, or a lot of people who are listening who maybe are expanding to multiple shops, as we grow and my personal income has grown, my need to get the higher percentage of revenue out of each business decreases, right? When it was just one shop and it was 50-50, damn, we got to get X amount of dollars out of this place. We got to maximize every penny because otherwise we're not making enough money, right? But in the new facilities, it's like, all right, well, if I could just get, I'm not doing a lot in these facilities. I do all the marketing, but again, I do that remotely. So it's not like I'm there training people anymore. It's not Coach Joe doing 40 training sessions a week and Dan doing the other 40. So now it's like, hey, if I can get 20% out of there for myself, or 15% out of there for myself, great, I'll do that. And then we just can move on to the next one. So we can titrate our salaries down a little bit to make those shops a little bit more economically sound for the employees that are there. Because our goal with those facilities is to kind of have like a managing director there, what we call a facility leader, who has the potential to have a 6-figure salary so that they don't leave, right? So that person feels really tied to that business. They're basically the GM and manager of that facility. And they have a real opportunity to make a real career out of it. So in the smaller shops, there's usually 2, possibly 3 employees, depending on the size of the facility and how many people you have. In our model, it's 1,500 square feet, 125 people, paying $400 a month with 2 employees.
Yeah, I know. These, I'm not a financial advisor.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have to put that out there. But with the leasing, the way that I would kind of explain that to somebody is, it doesn't matter what profession it is. If they need a piece of equipment for their profession, if you can't afford to buy it, then don't lease it. Now, if you can afford to buy it, but it's going to hurt, like it's a big chunk, then by all means lease it. But in other words, they could, you know what I'm saying? But it's going to, it's going to hurt.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great advice. That's great advice.
But sometimes, like when I first started the business, I remember I was going out doing seminars and I needed a fucking projector. And they were big.
They were expensive at the time.
They're like $5,000, man. I had no way to do it. So I had to lease the damn thing. And I didn't have the money. Actually, I probably could have, right? But it would have drained the company's capital and it would take forever to be able to come back. I was so paranoid with that thing. When I flew, I'd have to keep it in my lap. And then if they had to throw it underneath for whatever reason, I would go into the little office, the flight attendant's office or whatever it is, plug it in and make sure it's still turned on. Because if it didn't, they were going to pay for it because the bulbs are like $600.
Yeah.
And
we just upgraded our podcast equipment, so we upgraded with some really great travel equipment.
Yeah.
Right. We spent like $3,000 on podcast gear, so we brought it with us to an event a couple weeks ago, and I had that shit in my bag. I wouldn't even put it in the suitcase. I took it on my carry-on because I'm like, I don't want nobody touching my stuff. Right. And
now for the owners that you're speaking to, and this may be more of an accounting question that they definitely should run through their accountant. Would you suggest, as far as their own salary, to be able to cap that at the lowest amount they possibly could and then take draws?
Yes.
It keeps them out of tax bracket. You can only, it depends upon income. I do know that.
Yeah.
If the income's too high, you can't pay yourself $40,000 a year. It's got to be reasonable, but that way they can keep it low. That way it doesn't hurt the fixed expenses.
Again, this is, on the record, we're not CPAs.
Yeah, we're not CPAs, accountants, and all that.
But I mean,
is this something they should ask their accountant?
They should ask their accountant if they can put themselves on a reasonable salary and take the rest as an owner's draw. Usually, that can help in certain scenarios with like self-employment tax and things like that the government
cash flow
100%. So it is something that's been recommended to us.
Yeah. I wish we have done that sooner. We actually recently, up until this point, have only taken draw up until this year, and we just started doing what you just said by going partially W-2, partially draw. And to your point,
I've always done it that way.
Yeah, I mean, you're smarter than us, and we're just a couple of meatheads trying to work out, right? And so the reality is that that does save your cash flow a lot, because I know one of the things that hampered us back in the day, and obviously when we were paying ourselves full distribution. Now, we've had a pretty good business for the last decade, right? Mm-hmm. But before that, it was a lot of ups and downs. And all of a sudden our pay would come around and it's like, hey, it's time to pay out $8,000 to Joe and Dan at the end of a month or whatever. And it would be like, oh, that's a lot of money. Maybe we just take $6 this month. And
see, that becomes very hard to navigate accounting wise.
Correct. Exactly.
Where if it's always low and you can't.
Yeah, there's also been months where it went the other way.
Yeah, of course.
A personal checkbook to float the business, that has happened too.
Yeah,
yeah. So I mean, there's definitely going partially salary, and one of the obviously, again, speak to the accounting laws in each state are a little bit different.
You need to speak to the attorney,
but the reality is
the accountant.
And I'm not saying this in the realm of cheating, but you want to minimize your tax obligation as much as humanly possible. And it really makes no sense for a business as big as ours, with the revenue that we're doing now, to be paying 15% in personal self-employment tax. I mean, that's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. That's an enormous amount of money, right? When you get to certain numbers, it's like, holy shit, that's a lot of.
Well, depending where you are, the draw will be taxed less than what the income would be.
Correct.
Not a lot. It's not a huge difference, but it's still a difference.
Exactly. But every little bit counts, right? I mean, like I said, over the course of a year, one of the great benefits of running a business is having some of those write-offs, having some of those tax loopholes and things like that, which are not you're not cheating the system. You're just using the system to your advantage. I mean, look, here's the reality. We hire and develop people in our community. We're gonna have 24 employees. We have world-class careers for people. So every paycheck has mine or Dan's signature on it. So all that Social Security tax, disability, all that type of stuff. We're taking the risk on that. Also,
you get to pay it twice too.
Yeah. That's what I talked about on the first show, where the people.
Yeah.
You pay the
and
team.
When you die, your family gets to pay it.
You pay the team member. You pay tax for them to receive it, and you
do it on yourself.
Yeah,
because you essentially are the employee in that case. So you're paying it twice.
Yeah, for yourself, and then again to yourself.
Taxes are great. Fucking love them. It's amazing. With your upcoming event, because we tapped on it a little bit about the interns. tell me more about not just the event, but let's discuss how to take the intern and get them into the employee, because throughout the history of my business, a lot of my employees have come that route. Now, I will also say when I go that route, I don't have 10-year-long employees. You know, they're not as long, because typically you're a stepping stone, you know, and then it's just going to move on to the next one. But it's a different business model, you know, that I'm in than what you're in. So how does one go about that? So finding them is the first problem.
Yeah. So
you're lucky.
Couple things. One,
not lucky. You're positioned very nicely.
Yeah. So, I mean, the reality is that, so I didn't know shit about developing employees when I started, but I had an educational position and an educational background, right? I'm a college professor for 23 years now, right? So the being that I realized the value of an internship program and what that could do for us. Now, at the time, it was strictly to get an employee for very cheap labor. Right? I was like, all right, we can start this business with an extra person for next to nothing, and the exchange of value is, you know, work experience for, you know, free labor in a sense, right? And you know, that first person happened to be, I mean, honestly, one of the best human beings that is in both of our lives, right? And he just happened to be a home run right from the start, and that's Mike Capriglione, Mike's Big Mike, as we call him. And Mike was sitting in the front row of my class with a Inzer shirt on, and I made obviously at that time I was training and whatever and big into it, and we were open. And I had the gym in 06. This was like 07, 08 when he had me for 2 years. He had me for 2 semesters. And then I had told him we were going to open up a gym in 08. He started coming up to my first facility to come poke around and train. You know, shout out to Mike for tearing a muscle in my neck, having me do 2 heavy farmer's carries. And but that summer we hired Mike, and I made a comment about, like, you know, unless you're the powerlifting meathead in front here, and whatever. And we just kind of sparked a friendship, and he started chatting with me every day, and that was it. In my opinion, you know, for training, specifically for a training business, looking to hire trainers, the best pathway by far for us has been the intern to all-star. And that's basically, you know, get them into a great, well planned out, let's call it 6 to 10 week summer internship, or fall, spring, whatever you plan on doing. At first, we only ran the summer because that's all we had the time to execute properly on, right? Because I was teaching, and Dan, at the time when we first started the business, Dan was coaching football as well too. And so we would run the summer internship, and it was, you know, education, you know, everything, literally anatomy and physiology, you know, sports training, X's and O's, programming design, periodization. You know, I wrote a program, you know, high school periodization for high school, for athletes, that we still use the base template for that today, which is basically like a variation of a conjugate meets kind of Joe Ken tier system, right? And we did that for years. I would teach that system. I mean, when Dan and Mike started working that summer, every day we had anatomy class with Joe. You know, we'd break down the shoulders, the knees, and things like that. And you get to build a culture. You get kids who have a clean slate. They come in with an open mind and a willingness to learn. Then we usually make them a part-time offer. Right, they work till they finish school part-time usually. So that could be a semester to a year to maybe 2, depending on when they're doing their internship. They work part-time if they're really good. If after a 10-week summer intern and a 6 months of working part-time, if you don't know that they're a good culture fit and have the, you know, personal fortitude to upskill themselves and continue to progress in your business, well, that I would say that's your fault at that point then, right? Because that has given us the best opportunity to really get people in, vet them out, see their culture, see their work ethic and ability, and not have to overextend ourselves in a business. And in 6 months, we have told a few people that came through interns who were hired to take a hike because they had either flatlined or degraded. And the ones who have consistently gotten better, they're still on the team. And you know, and your business is a little bit different, but I look at for us, like Mike, Adam, Joey, Stephanie, Kat, you know, Alex Fleesing, Alex Julian, all of our full-timers, except the 2 we just hired, all came from the internship, and almost all of them had me as a teacher. So I don't know if there's a magic correlation there, right? But I'm also vetting people in class. I saw you do the work. You got straight A's on your exams. You showed up every day. I never pick an intern from my class who I don't recognize personally or didn't have personal conversations with me, or I didn't check their attendance and they're at like 60% or less attendance. Is like, no, you're not getting an intern. You were not reliable. So the people who've gotten the internships have been the kids who were the ones where their asses were in the seat every class 2 or 3 times a week. They did the work. They got an A's. I obviously have had the ability to check kids' transcripts. So if somebody sends in an application and they're one of my students, I can go in and look and say, oh, hey, this kid's they got a 3.5 GPA. This kid's a killer. Like, great job doing work, right? So that's given me personally an advantage. So if you don't have that personal advantage, I also sit on the board of directors at another university that's close to us too, 5 minutes away from the school. So we get internships from there. You have to build those relationships. So you got to go to the universities. You have to send them. Every university has a cooperative education / internship coordinator. You have to go shake that person's hand, let them know what you do. They're going to give you a bunch of paperwork to fill out. You go there with like your job descriptions and job boards. You're looking for your summer internship packet, right? Now, ours is really awesome. It looks like it's straight out of the NSCA manual, right? Because part of it is, because that's the goal of it, is to get them certified at the end of even though certification, we could say they're bullshit or not, right? To a kid that has no experience, it's important, right? So, and we tie that to the NSCA, and we want them to get an NSCA CPT or CSCS at the end of that internship. So we follow some of that curriculum, right? Plus the anecdotal stuff that they need to know about our business. And you have to go build those relationships. So we do an internship job ad on Indeed and in LinkedIn, right? So we're recruiting actively, treating it like marketing, right? We got to put together a really good job ad that sounds fun and exciting and engaging, like you're joining this amazing team. I want people to read our job ad and be like, fuck, I want to work there, right? That sounds amazing. That sounds like a fun place to be with great opportunity. Not like 40 hours a week, $25 an hour, right? And it's just a bullet point. Yeah, exactly. So, and then go make those connections. So we have great relationships with a coordinator at University of Delaware. We have a great relationship with a coordinator at the University of Syracuse, right? We have the local schools that I'm personally involved with. We have schools other than that, Dan's brother, Rutgers, right? Dan had a connection up at Cortland, right? Because his brother went to Cortland. So, we're anytime we get a great kid, maybe is looking for exercise science or whatever, they might give Dan a ping and be like, hey, you got any openings this summer for an internship, right? You got to go out and make those relationships. When you know that when you teach somebody, you have to put your ideas on paper. So I'm going to bring these kids into my facility. And again, the first one was Dan and Mike. Again, like Dan was my partner, but in a sense, that's first summer. I treated them both like they were interns because I had to teach these guys everything, right? Specifically training stuff. And it was like, all right, well, let me set up a summer curriculum. Let me build this out. And it's like, hey, we don't get busy. At that time, we were only training athletes. So it was like, hey, we don't get busy till 3 p.m. So you guys show up every day at 12. We're going to lift. And then at the end of every lift, we're going to dissect what we did, why we did it, how to put it together, program. Dan, you put today's workout on the board. I want you to write up the workout, write up the warm up, right? And it was constant reps all summer long, to where by the end of the summer, Dan understood the programming and periodization model. He understood how to put the workouts together. He understood the flow of each session and what we were doing. And he had, obviously, maybe he didn't have my experience in the anatomy and like biomechanics and stuff like that, but he had a basic understanding of how not to hurt kids and how to hurt people, right? And do that. And then we just built on that from there. And now that program has evolved tremendously, where our director of training and our other partner, Adam, is running that program. And it's way more comprehensive now with reading assignments, a summer project that they have to do, a training manual and log that they're keeping all summer, right? And it's built upon the foundation of, we're going to get these kids in for 10 weeks. We're going to pour into them. We're going to educate them. And the goal is to hire 1 or 2 of them. And the ones that we don't, we still want them to walk out the door and be like, that experience changed my life, right? And so...
Well, they're the advantage of, and you kind of touched on it, is teaching it is you have to go back and you have to learn it.
Yeah.
You have to revisit it. But then if you're teaching it to somebody that doesn't have a background in that, say you teaching it to Joe.
Yes.
Then he's going to understand it at a level that's at a lower level, a less technical level, which then becomes what you can present to the normal person that's at a 3rd grade level.
Correct.
Because if you try to present to that normal person at the 3rd grade level, even without trying, you're so far over their head that it has to kind of...
Yeah, most of our trainers don't need to know like molecular biology and like, you know, very high end, you know, biomechanics and stuff, right? They have to understand the basics, right? So, but I think like too, like it running the internship and really focusing on education as a company and as a whole, whether you're an intern, you're a new, like right now, Tyler and Ariana are getting poured into it and they're drinking from a fire hose because it's like, hey, you got to learn all these systems, these processes, and not a lot of stuff is digitized. We have like Zoom videos and stuff like that, right? But the reality is that if it has pointed out lots of weaknesses in our company to ourselves, where it's like, oh man, we really need to have like a much better, well-defined customer service protocol and process. Let me put together a slide deck. Let me put together the Varsity House customer guide to great service and what it actually means to deliver a great training session and be great at customer service. Put it on paper, create a slide deck, film a Zoom video over the slide deck, and now I have this 15-minute asset that every time we hire somebody, I just, hey man, you got to watch these 3 or 4 videos that we have, one on our customer service, one on our pricing and marketing strategies, blah, blah, blah. And now they can go through these and they have a much better system, right? And that's forced us to, like you said, dive deeper into what we do, make sure it's crystal clear, because gray area is, but what I like, you know, clarity is kindness. Where there's lack of clarity, there's confusion, right? People are going to get busy doing something regardless. They're going to find something to get busy with. So if you don't clarify exactly what it's supposed to be, they're going to find their own clarity, you know?
Hey guys, if you're enjoying what you're watching, make sure to take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. Back to the internship. And this is going to be a smaller number of people, and you will know the type of person that I'm speaking about here because you personally know a lot of the people that have said this to me, and it's about the internships, is they've dabbled with the internships and haven't really been successful with it. But the problem that they have is, say, one of their other revenue streams is they'll do mentorships with people to where people will pay them to come in and learn from them for a week, 2, 3 weeks. And the fees are in the thousands of dollars to be able to do that. So they get kind of wrapped up in this mindset because interns now are not they expect more money, more revenue than they ever have before. So their mindset is, this is bullshit. You know, this person, you know, I'm supposed to pay them $25 an hour to teach them all the stuff that I'm teaching these people, you know, essentially for $6,000 a week, you know, and now I'm going to give it to, and I have to pay them, you know what I'm saying? So I'm going to pay them for what I'm charging. And it's a weird place for these people to be in. And I don't think they're seeing the long term, but I'll let you expand. You know what I'm talking about, because I'm sure you know people that fall in this camp.
Of course. I mean, with this, I mean, if you're expecting to be in the long game though, like I'll use, I mean, you mentioned before, we've got an event coming up September 18th and 19th in Scottsdale. The keynote speaker for that event, I won't even use us as an example, is Mark, and it's at Power Strength. I'm not discrediting Mark, because I know he's going to listen to this, and he was pumped up that we were getting together again. Strong guy, like, I know he's followed Elite, and he is the biggest student of the game. But what does he do amazing? He develops team.
Yeah, he's got an exceptional
team. He probably has one of the best internships. Forget our industry. I would put it up against other industries where there is a tremendous amount of time, energy, focus on the recruiting, developing, marketing, and they got better players. So they're fucking winning. So it's like, okay, yeah, it might be the short-term focus is like, yeah, it might cost you some time. It might cost you some money. You might get frustrated, but for every kid that stinks, you might pick up one that's amazing. And that amazing person could change your business forever. We've seen it. We're living proof. We're out in Ohio. We were walking last night after dinner, and we're just you just reflect when you get to do cool stuff like this. And this is a highlight of the year, you know, it really is. And we're just like, man, we're out here, like, you know, we all have worries like family stuff and business stuff, but like by and large, day to day with our businesses, we're not that worried. And it's is a reflection on the humans that we've developed to empower them to do specific jobs. Yeah. And to the business owner listening to this, there's two things you can't avoid if you want to make it. It's time developing team, right? And you cannot avoid learning how to market your business, because marketing is customer acquisition, but it's also marketing and recruiting are the same damn thing. Mm-hmm. Alabama won for such a long time with Nick Saban because the dude was the best recruiter. He's the best marketer. They have sick facilities. They have the best travel accommodations, the best unit, all that stuff. And, you can do that in an organization as well.
Yeah. Marketing is, look around, look at the branding everywhere, right? Marketing is a brand identification. It's a set of words, right, that you're going to use and repeat over that kind of identify the brand's values or, mission in a sense, like live, learn, pass it on, hungry, humble, committed, right? Things like that for us. And a lot of business that we deal with on the consulting side, when they come in, they don't have a lot of those things written down. They're like, oh, do you have a set of core values and like a mission statement that you give to your employees? No. It's like, all right, well, how do they know what they're striving for every day? And if it's just dollars, right, then you've created a transactional environment. It's a foregone conclusion that I have to pay people.
Interesting. How do you help them discover the core values?
Well, so so that's a great question, Dave. We had somebody come out to help us with that, and it was basically like the drill that he did with us was, because you guys are the owner operators, and almost all businesses are somewhat of a reflection of the owner, right, and the values that you have, right? What would your friends and family say about you on your gravestone if you weren't here today? If you died tomorrow, what would your friends and family, what would your wife get up there and say your eulogy? Right?
Would you want them to say?
What would you want? What would you want them to say? Would you want them to say, right? And again, like Dan and I went to a bunch of things, read a bunch of books, and we settled on hungry, humble, committed, socially smart, right? And because I think, like, I look at myself, I've had a job since I was 12 years old. Dan's work, when I met Dan, he was delivering Chinese food and stuff like that, even though, he comes from a good, hard-working, middle-class family. Like, they always instilled, like, you got to get a job, stuff like that, stand on your own 2 feet, humble. I have no ego. I passed every bit of knowledge I have down to Dan and Mike so that Mike could be a better coach than I ever was, right? And as when me and Dan made the switch where I was the CEO and Dan was kind of in charge of marketing and sales, we flip-flopped those roles. A lot of people that we were in a consulting group were like, they're done. It's the kiss of death. They're probably going home and breaking up as a couple. I think it strengthened us because we actually felt relieved. Yeah. Because we were in the wrong roles. He's a way better leader of humans and better at the follow-through process, and I'm the creative kind of like face. I'm great at sales and marketing and idea generation, but I don't want to take any of those ideas to the finish line.
Well, I think the core values are huge. I can't take credit for this because I don't know who introduced it to me, but it was a long time ago, and it was the project was to write down, because your core values are established before you're really a teenager. Mm-hmm. And to write down the names of people that I can distinctly remember that had some type of impact. And it didn't have to be an actual person. It could be a character in a book. It could be a movie, anything. Write down, who they were and then what statement they said and what it was.
Rocky.
Yeah, but why? What statement? Like what part of it?
Yeah.
And
there's no easy way out.
Yeah. And then once you have all those, and this was pre, GPTs, just search Google and look for any website that had core values, like a giant list of core values. Then you would tag each one of those statements with a core value. And I used to have people do that all the time, and worked almost without fail, except one time. It was a professional athlete and there was no positive. Yeah. Right. So I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm fucked. Because I'll leave them alone because I don't want to know. Like, that's their history. I just want to know what the values, I don't want to know that stuff. So then I asked them, well, write down the negative. Like, what's the negative shit that you remember that comes straight up? Because that's a violation, of the core values. Yeah. So then I would have people do both. And then once you have both, you can usually distill that down into like 3 or 4.
Yep.
And bam, And with what I have found with that is it's a spectrum.
Sure.
You're never going to always be, you're going to violate it to a certain degree, but you're going to know. Any business decision I've ever had to make, if I'm frustrated or confused, if I just look at those, I in my gut, I know the answer. 100%. It may not be what I want to do, 100%. But I know the answer.
Yes.
And so it allows you to sleep better. It allows you to make decisions better. It allows you to scale better. It allows you to do all these other things better, because as long as you're not violating those, then the stress is so much more reduced. Because the only time you get stressed is when you're violating it.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we've had, anytime we've had employee issues, it was because they were outside the bell curve of where we felt the core value spectrum lied, right? And that's just, as a wiser individual who's way more successful in business to us said to us, people don't get fired, they fire themselves, right? And they fire themselves by taking liberties outside of the standards that you set for your business. And that's really what core values are. Core values are a set of standards of how we're going to treat, act, and live, right?
Yeah.
And so whatever those are for your company, and for ours or whatever, they might be a little bit different. But at the end of the day, they are a set of standards. And there's an expectation that we're going to act and treat each other in a certain way, right?
But what you don't want to do is to go look at other people's core values and try to use those as your own.
No. And I think like what Dan and I did after we found out, after we kind of landed the plane on like what a few catchy kind of things that we would think would be like, if I was going to describe Dan at his eulogy, I'm going to stand up there and talk about how hard he worked, how humble he was, how willing to learn he was, how committed he was to this business, this brand, and socially smart is a big part, because in a customer service business, talking about politics, religion, sexual deviance, whatever it could be, right? It's like, that shit don't fly here, because you got people from every walk of life. Yeah. Right? So you being socially smart is knowing how to read a room, right? But at the end of the day, like what you have to do from that point on, once you have that, is because a set of words on the wall doesn't mean shit. You got to define what that means. So what we've done is taken that core value drill one step further. So once you have hungry, humble, committed, socially smart, we then define that as to what it means on the client side, and then define what that means on the employee side. So that when we hire, we have this sheet called a core value gut check, and it's what the core values mean, and we give that to our employees, and it's an understanding of like what hard work means and what the expectation is. Not that you have to be here 90 hours a week, but like it means that when a teammate waves the white flag and says they need some help, that you're willing to raise your hand and say, hey, I'll cover your sessions this week, man. I know you're not feeling good. Maybe you get me next week, right? It's those types of things. It's having the humility to you go into the bathroom and you see the bathroom it is a little bit of a mess. It's not saying that's not my job, right? It's doing something about it, right? It's like, hey, we're all in this together. In the facility, in a private sector brick and mortar gym, the facility cleanliness matters a lot.
You gotta own it.
You got to own it, right? Commitment to excellence. What, Dan does it every week in the check-in. What'd you learn this week, Dave? What are you reading? What are you learning? Where are you going? Like what type of, what do you have planned in the next quarter for education for yourself? Like what's something, Dan puts it out to our staff all the time. What's a skill that you don't have that you want to learn? Because if they don't know where to get it, I'm going to help them get it. And then socially smart, like how can we, and sometimes it is just having a, that's a hiring thing. That's a little bit more of an intrinsic personality thing. So I think that's hiring the right people, but it might be having that radically candid conversation with somebody that's like, hey man, we don't like to talk about those things on the gym floor. Like, I know you might be like super conservative, Mr. Trump, Republican, whatever. And again, I'm not saying that's good or bad, but going off the deep and getting a little bit aggressive with a client because they voted for Biden or whatever it might be, like that shit don't fly.
Well, they're coming to the gym to get away from that shit.
Yeah.
So that's the main thing.
Just be reminding a 25-year-old, it's like, yo man,
remember
that person's paying $1,000 a month for him and his wife to come here. Like he don't want to come here and get badgered about politics.
No, they're getting badgered about it everywhere else. It's like, this is the one place I don't have to listen to this.
Let's have some fun.
The something that you just said too is like, if there's a problem, and I think this started with Joe and I, you could have those core value sets and things like that, but it's literally like that is the base of everything we do. That is the foundation. That's what builds the trust in your organization. But something I want to touch upon there as well is like, if there is an issue, avoiding the difficult conversation just leads to a further issue down the road, where there can't be an environment where you fear telling me that I did something that was maybe outside the lines of what's appropriate in this organization. Because if I continue to do it for 6 months and now you resent me for it, whose fault is that?
Well, to that note, how many times are those just misunderstandings too?
Of course. Yeah. Most of the time.
Most of it, but it does, the more it escalates,
Right.
the more it can be an actual real problem.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
let it go too far.
The one thing too, I wanted to circle back because I just didn't think of it when you asked, but with our internship, Joe is obviously at Montclair and Stack, but those cooperative educational programs through universities, a lot of times if you get accredited,
Yep.
students can get, if they're exercise science or kinesiology, they could get credits to come to your facility and you don't have to pay them anything. Mm-hmm. It's part of their degree where you could have them for, I think it's 30 hours is the max.
Yeah.
We pay a stipend. Obviously we give some fringe benefits like that, but the majority of people are getting college credits to do our internship, which circumvents, it's a tactical thing, but it circumvents some of the big expenses.
And technically in New York and New Jersey, if they are getting college credits, you are not supposed to pay them at all. Mm-hmm. So we can't put them on a W-2 or anything like that. So that's why we do the stipend. That's why we do the stipend. So I want to exceed the expectation. That's my goal on customer service.
Well, the reality, they should learn more in your internship, or anybody that's really good at the strength and conditioning side than they're going to learn in the whole time they're in college.
100%.
There's no question that in 10 weeks with us, they learn infinitely more about strength training and being a great coach than they ever do in college.
They don't have to do any sessions when they're
That's what I'm saying. I was just going to say that. They've never, on day one, they've got, you got 12 people looking at you and they're staring at you and you got the shirt on. You're the expert.
Yeah.
So let's, you got to figure it out.
Which is crazy if you think about it.
This summer, we have one intern who had some prior training experience. So out of 6 interns in our headquarters, one of them has had a certification and has been training people for about a year and change, right? And part-time. So that is generally the case with the majority of college kids coming in. So for all the people listening to this, if you're a gym owner, you just have to understand that you can't set your expectations too high. What I'm trying to find is the right type of human.
So outside of keeping the kid in a bubble, right?
Yeah.
Which, after high school is probably not a bad thing.
Yep.
To have a kid in a bubble why in the fuck go to college, to do this?
You mean to do this as a career?
Yeah.
It's a great question because my son asks me all the time. Now, my wife and I, we both come from, shit poor, dirt poor families, right? So like us, and at the time when we went to school in the early 90s, right, when we went to college, for me, it was a personal badge of honor, right?
Yeah.
Like nobody in my family went to college. I knew I wanted to get my way out of that kind of lower class, dirt poor income status. So I was like, I'm going to go to college and educate myself. My wife, same thing. My wife is an immigrant. So she came over here with $0. And so for us, it was kind of a badge of honor. Now, to be an entrepreneur, to be a great coach, you technically do not have to go to college.
But you need to self-learn. You
need to self-learn.
Because a lot of people say that. I tend to agree with that.
Yes.
But the caveat is you have to self-learn from a lot of different people.
Now, I will say, though, with an asterisk, that the best employees that we have are all educated. And every employee that we have now, we only hire college degrees. And the reason why, and it's anecdotal, but it shows that you did a thing. You got got your ass up and went somebody and took some shit from other people for a few years. And you showed that you can be somewhere on time, do a thing, finish task, and accomplish the goal. Does that mean that you're going to be a world-class coach? Does that mean that you're going to be the next great gym owner? Absolutely not. All the skills I learned about running my business happened way outside of college, right? Most of the skills that I learned to become a good coach happened outside of college. College gave me structure. It gave me commitment. It showed me commitment. It showed me discipline and hard work, right? Now my background was in human physiology, right? So I got a great background in human phys, anatomy and physiology, biomechanics, things like that as a base of knowledge, okay? But I use a fraction of that when it comes to training people.
Maybe more than you think, because it becomes your bullshit detector.
Yeah.
Especially in this industry.
It does now, because I can listen to people speak. I'm like, this person doesn't know shit.
Yeah.
But I think, like, again, but going to college is important. And if you're at the scale of business that we're trying to run, where we're opening multiple shops, and you got this multi-million-dollar organization, we're looking for people who can contribute on a higher level. I don't want just me head trainers who never do nothing but show up and train, right? I want people who are going to elevate themselves in the business. And I've seen time and time again that the people who come in with a base level of college education, a bachelor's degree or whatever, generally seem to exceed. Now, some people, like we have a guy, Colin, who's on staff now. Colin's a great dude. He's been a great coach for us for a few years. He's got an MBA. He finished his MBA. He's a sharp mother effer. Now, to have him on our staff, who wants to be with us, who's committed, who's upskilled himself to that level, has real business management skills. Obviously, I'm excited about that, because now he could take some of those skills and maybe he could become the next COO. Maybe he's going to be a facility leader. Maybe he could be our first regional facility leader who has the business and leadership and management chops to run a region of 4 or 5 shops. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know necessarily that that's going to come from somebody who's never went to college. Now, it's possible, but the likelihood definitely goes down. Or you have to just be an exceptional self-learner, and some people just don't have that structure.
Well, in that case, it would depend upon how open-minded they could be, because a lot of the MBAs that I've known are trained in a corporate sector.
Yes.
Which is not the same thing as a mom and pop or a small business. One is politics, one is drama.
Yeah.
It's just it's a different language.
Great way to put it.
But the technical skills are the same.
Sure.
It's being able to navigate the difference between them.
Now, when it comes to my son, who's like, Daddy, I want to open up the gym. Do I get Varsity House when you die? Is Varsity House mine? I said, we got to deal with it. We either got to take Uncle Dan out. We got to take Uncle Dan out. I said, but the reality is, I said, look, if you want to open up a gym, I have all the tools and resources and ability to help you. I said, you don't have to go to college to do that. I said, but your ass is going to college. And again, at this point, my wife and I have the means to do it. And it's important to us in terms of his ability to go out and learn, educate himself, and put himself in a class of educated and like-minded individuals.
Well, it's a bubble.
There's nothing wrong with it. If you use it,
like the military is a bubble as well, right?
College is a tool. You got to use it.
I mean, your brain's a little fucked up when you're 18 to 22. You do a lot of stupid shit. So any bubble you can kind of keep them in.
Yes.
There's less stupid shit that can happen.
Yes. You have other things to focus your time and attention.
Well, the real world's a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's
when you're free and you have money and there's no constraints, all of a sudden, shit could go awry really quick.
Yeah.
For certain.
With event, what else is being covered? Because it's an annual retreat.
Yeah.
Right. So the focus is the internship, but
it's all employee development. So I'm speaking. Obviously, our team is speaking. We got Mark Ennis. We got a great guy, Scott Carpenter, who owns multiple gyms, who's a business guru himself, speaking as a guest speakers. Right. We'll have an expert panel of some of the best gym owners that we know on planet Earth. Right. That are going to be there to answer questions and things like that. But it's all employee development, and it starts with you're having your mission and your core values and your economic numbers known, and Dan covers a lot of that, right? I'm talking about the marketing and recruiting process, how to market and recruit to get A players, okay? Because that's what it is. It's a marketing process. We have a year-round process for recruiting. I spend a lot of time and energy putting our job descriptions together, putting our job landing pages and the job ads and the posts and stuff that we put out on LinkedIn and Indeed to make sure that it sounds attractive to people, right? That it sparks their interest. We've put a process together where we talked about job ad to 15-minute pre-interview, Zoom call to our interview questions and the interview process to a well-scripted shadow day where they come in for 3 to 4 hours and work in the business, to the offer process when we meet them again to actually make the offer if they get through the process. So I'm going to outline all of that. So that's very tactical. So for the business owners who come to that, they're going to get a blueprint on basically everything from they're going to get copies of our job ads, they're going to get copies of our questionnaires and our interview questions and things like that. So they're going to walk out of there literally with a playbook of how to recruit and hire people. Then we're going to have guys like Mark. Mark's going to talk about building culture, building a great team, building a team that, you know, is driving towards a mission, how to get more from less, how to make your staff mini profit centers within themselves, whether you're a trainer or you're one of his managers, you know.
That's a big one, where the curated roundtable is going to be all-star people that have been interns in our business or others that are now all-star employees. That will be the roundtable discussion. And I know for a lot of people, sometimes all they need to do is see it in motion, and you know, context is everything. Like, oh, well, they did it, so I can do it too. And here's the playbook that they used, and it yielded this result in terms of a person. Sometimes you just need to be around it for it to become real, especially if you're like a visual learner. And the retreat's awesome because you are around. I know it gets probably used probably more than it should, but being around like-minded people that are doing similar things, there are not, I mean, how many gym owners are friends with a lot of other gym owners? Like, probably pretty rare. You're probably not hanging out with people like that very frequently. So spending 2 days with a varying viewpoint on great leadership, or how to turn people into entrepreneurs in your business, or how to structure a contract, what, you know, different ads for recruiting interns looks like. It's just, you know, and then you get to discuss those things on breaks and at socials. Yeah. It's really important because for such a long time in this industry, it has been a lot, very focused on the next certification, and a lot.
And I think a lot of business masterminds, you know, when you go to a gym business mastermind, they're almost all like exclusively marketing tactics. And we've done a few like that where it's a lot of marketing, and that's super important. But we want to do, we try to pick some topics each year. And a lot of times when we switch these up, we come up with a theme for these events. It's really to make it fun for us too, because we've done so many of these. And I think, again, when you get to a certain level, marketing matters, but nothing matters more than having great people, because that takes care of a lot of the marketing. Like, look, before there was ever a marketing machine at Varsity House, there was Joe, Dan, and Adam, and Mike standing on the fucking gym floor for 60 hours a week each. That was the marketing. The marketing was world-class coaching, world-class give a shit, 4 dudes who cared more than anybody. And, you know, anytime a parent called, they called my personal cell phone. That was the marketing. Joe is the guy, Dan is my guy, right? That was marketing. Marketing was, we got exceptional results, the high energy training, great coaching on the floor with a high give a shit factor, right? Then, you know, you fast forward a bunch of years, Dan and I don't coach nearly as much as we used to, if at all, right? Some weeks, right? So now there's a real, you know, robust marketing machine, emails, consistent JVs, joint ventures, community events, digital ads, all that type of stuff, right? And I think, like, you know, but the most important thing and the greatest, every turning point in our business where there was an explosive growth, it was because of a who. It was because of a person. First it was Dan, then it was, you know, then Mike. I was the head coach and the director of training. Then Mike took over that role. It allowed me to delegate that out to him, offload 15 hours of programming and periodization from my book, and go deeper into the marketing and sales processes. Then we bring in Adam. Adam was an intern. He's now our COO and partner. He runs the personal training studios, right? Dan and I are in each studio once a month, right? So the reality is that, you know, we're not doing a ton. That person's down there every day, every week, boots on the ground. He's the one doing the professional, you know, leadership and the meetings and things like that with the facility leaders. Right. And I can go down the line. Kat's our facility leader. She was an intern. You know, Chris is our other facility leader. He was an intern. Right. So we're going to basically just outline that entire process. So we felt like outside of marketing, what is the thing we get the most questions on, and we get where there's the, let's call it the grayest area of clarity, but also cost the business the most money. In a training business, payroll is the biggest expense by far.
We're selling time for money.
So, and I look at it this way, like, I can give you 50 marketing. We can sit here right now and I can give you 50 marketing tactics, right, that you could use to generate new customers. But if you don't have good people servicing those customers, a lot of times they're just right out the door within a few months, right? So marketing tactics, you know, that's cheap and easy, right? Developing a culture, developing a real great, you know, employee set, that takes a lot of work.
And with all the consulting and all the events that you've done, and even all the mentorships and all the other thing, if I have any strength athlete come out and say in the last 6 years, there's always one deficit that stands out more than anything else. If it's any of the strength athletes, it's the ability to brace, right? It's just, that's always the biggest issue. And it's different than what it was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, so I can't remember what it was, but this is like the recent thing. So with all those things, what's the biggest deficit that when you're speaking to somebody, if it's a consulting or a mentorship or any of the attendees that come to any of these events, every one of them is like, that right there is the biggest deficit amongst everybody.
You go first. I'll see what your answer says. Mine might be different.
That's a tough question, but I would say a blanketed statement on that is probably to a lift or two, somebody that's coming to train with you that's already strong, is being ready to take the advice and actually put it into motion. And it's like, yeah, you could hear something and not all of it's going to be applicable for everybody in the room. Some people will be like, hey, I'd love to hire up employees one day, but I'm not there yet. So I want to just come and learn and see and hear from people that are doing it. But if you see the object in motion and it's working, why are you trying to reinvent the wheel? You have to have the abundance mindset that, hey, maybe I'm here in this room. Maybe I've traveled to London, Ohio to learn from a freaking legend, and I'm going to listen to what he's got to say. And I'm not putting us in the same camp at all.
I get it.
But if you're going to pay money to fly to Arizona and be in that room, the 10 presentations, it might not strike a chord, but the one or two, like you got to listen to something and put it into motion. Like, it's just verbal diarrhea if you don't take something and then take the coaching, take the literature that's given, and there's a lot, be like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it. I'm going to put my logo on it, and bang, I'm going to at least try it. Like, it's action. And a lot of people are waiting for the right time to take that action with whatever it is, like with a marketing campaign. We talked about it last night. Like,
right time was yesterday.
Just try the campaign. You'll know in a month or less if it works or not. Yeah. All right, like this hiring structure, use these ads, see if you get better applicants. If you don't, then like we know we got to fix something. But the biggest thing is don't come in trying to prove us wrong. Don't come in, you know what I mean? Don't come in trying to prove Dave wrong in the weight room. Just listen to what he's got to say.
Yeah. I was going to say a little bit different, but that's 100% true. Being a student, being a learner, taking advice and running with it. And taking action is super important. Like, a lot of people come to these seminars, and I think they're professional, seminar jumpers, right? Like, they come to seminars, they accumulate all this knowledge, but they implement very little.
Which is, sometimes you only need to implement one little piece.
That's it.
And it's huge.
Just go, though.
Ginormous. Like, I mean, look, when we got turned on to digital marketing years ago, and we were very resistant because we thought of it as an expense. I mean, it transformed our business, and it's like, obviously the only regret was like, shit, we should have done that 2 years sooner.
And spent more.
And spent a lot more. I was going to say the ability to let go. The most gym owners, it's a control issue. The second you hire people, it's like having a kid. You are no longer in control of your time in life, right? To some degree, right? And you can put constraints around it. You can put guardrails around things like that. But when I decided to partner up with Dan, I was basically giving up a percentage of control in my company, right? That I had owned 100% control with. But the goal was that now I'm going to have a person that I can scale with. Same thing. When I handed over the reins to Big Mike to take over the training, programming, and periodization, became the director of training, it was giving up some of that control. And I don't remember who told me this statement, but it basically is, good enough can be exceptional if it's something you don't want to do or don't have the capacity to do well, right? And so, like, let's pretend in a vacuum that at that time, when I gave Mike the reins to be the head of training at our facility, that I was still a better coach. A lot of people, a lot of gym owners say, no way. They self-sabotage that person by taken the job, or even by I've seen it in person where they literally tell their clients that, well, that's because you're training with so and so. They almost like undermine their own employee, which is like
there's a varying degree of price sheet.
Oh yeah. Like Dan's the head coach, so I charge $100 more than everybody else. I think that's a bad look too. But anyway, the reality to give up control means that you're giving up some of that, right? And you know, if let's pretend that I was a better coach. Well, Mike coaching, let's say he's 80% of my 100% of ability, but him doing 80% of having the 80% of the skill set, but with 100% focus and dedication, is better than my 100% at 20% focus and dedication. You know what I mean? Because I'm trying to run a business, so I was super, super busy with a lot of other stuff, and it was obvious that I was having a trouble keeping up with the workload required to get the programs done, organized, and ready for our different groups of high school, middle school, college athletes and stuff like that. Where like when I offloaded that to Mike, that was his pure business focus. It was training people and programming the training for people. So even if I technically was a better coach, right, I was not focused on it. So it became better. You know, same like that. When we siloed our roles, you know, hey, Joe, you're going to spend the next 2 or 3 years really diving into the skill set of marketing, sales, and business development. And that's going to be your role in the company. And I'm going to take on finances, leadership, and managing this team, human management. And I'm going to upskill myself in those areas. And it's like divide and conquer. And Dan doesn't have an ego to say like, well, I can write emails better than you or this, that, and it's like, no, that's Joe's job and Joe's doing an exceptional job. Do I want to contribute? Do I feel like I can contribute? Yeah. When Joe needs me or I feel like I can, I will. And the same thing. It's not like I don't do any leadership or I don't do any meetings with people. And Dan's good at marketing. I'm good at leading and money too, right? But he's 100% focused on those key areas and I'm 100% focused on the other key areas. So it allows us to do better work, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I see is a lack of clarity, a little bit of an inability to let go and of that control, call that ego. Because I think, look, man, very few people open up a training business. If you're our type of guy and you're opening our type of training business, right? Most people started with, I'm going to be the best trainer, on planet Earth. Like,
it's the hardest thing to let go of.
Yeah. And even that was for me. It was like, I always jokingly say, when I went to the first business seminar I ever went to with Dan was out in Louisville with Pat Rigsby. And I, on that flight home, Coach Joe died. And that incessive need to be seen and be seen as the best by my peers or whatever died a little bit on that trip home, because I realized that there was a bigger picture to this business game, and that was the business side of it. It was like, I could be the best trainer in the world and we could be broke.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, I don't want to be broke. It was like, when you ask myself, like, what's the most important thing right now to me? It's like, is it being recognized by my peers as being this great coach, or is it, making a couple $100,000 a year? And it was like, I want to make some money. You know what I mean? So we just kind of had to eat it. And it was like, let me build a team. And it is our goal to be the best. It is our goal. We have it on our wall for a decade, be world leaders in strength. But world leaders in strength doesn't mean that individually have to be the best coach. It's, hey, as a team, as a culture, as a company, we want Varsity House to be recognized by the profession of strength and conditioning, by the industry of strength, as being one of the top shops on planet Earth, both on the training side, customer service, marketing, employee development. That's our goal. It's not Joe Riggio. It's not Joe. Like, I want to be, Joe's the best coach in the world, and there's a statue of Joe out front. That died in 2011.
You still want the statue in front, though.
I mean,
yeah.
I'd take a Rocky statue.
Yeah.
Any topics that you guys wanted to talk about I didn't bring up in your notes?
I mean, we talked about the pyramid of success. You want to talk about that a little bit? I mean, I think that's pretty.
Yeah. I mean, one of the big things that we're going to talk about at the retreat is we talked about the consistency and the cadence of an organization. And I just think about, like, I don't know, the success with anybody is just routine, like consistent routine. And if you want to evolve, like, obviously the routine and consistency, or the way that you practice, needs to evolve with it. So we're really going to show people how we practice, but we're big on lists. We're big on things that people can really hammer home and they become memorable, right? When they're memorable, another catchphrase, when they're memorable, they're repeatable. And we want to make it as simple as possible. And I've always been a huge fan. It was coached upon me when I was in college, John Wooden's Pyramid of Success. And, you know, the quote, never mistake activity for achievement. We have that on every single town hall in some form or fashion for the last, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. And we've recently created an adaptation of that from the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And it's literally sitting on our coaches' desks, wherever they work in our gym. And it's just to understand, like, hey, you know, we've taken Wooden's Pyramid of Success and we've kind of meshed it with the Pyramid of Success. And, you know, we are, I hate to say like brainwashing, but we are trying to be repetitive as to how we conduct ourselves outside the training floor. And, you know, some of the things I wrote them down before the show is just like, you have to trust one another. If you don't trust where this operation's going and the people that you're doing it with, it's never going to work, right? The second thing is you have to make sure that, you know, you can have the difficult conversations. It's okay to have a respectful conversation that might be like, hey, here's the line, you're crossing it.
Yeah, there can't be a fear of conflict, right? Healthy conflict.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like if you're screwing up, I have to be confident enough to be able to tell you, and you have to know that it's not coming from a place of personal attack. It's say, hey man, that's not going to be great for the business.
You know, as it pertains, like obviously Patrick Lencioni, like this is straight out of the book, but it's a commitment. And the way we look at it, the way we interpret that is, you don't have 1 foot over here, you're an online coach. There's nothing wrong with being an online coach, but if your full-time focus is being on an online coach, how can you be coaching here effectively 30 hours a week? And so it's like you have to commit to what you're doing here and be in that moment. Obviously, you got to be accountable to one another. You got to be accountable to the results that we set out for ourselves.
To yourself.
And at the end of the day, we keep score. Right. And like we keep score with results, and sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. But a lot of times organizations, they will never draw that line in the sand of like, this is good, this is not good, because they don't want to know if they lost or won. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you take that from that book, and obviously we've created an adaptation to Varsity House, but I know people are familiar with that rendition of it. But really, if you can get your team focused on those items, and really the presentations in Arizona will you know, revolve around
you said something
components
that made me think too. I think, you know, the majority of people who have money problems ignore their money, right? And so, you know, the majority of businesses that have business problems ignore the business side of things, right? And like, you know, if you're having money struggles, whether it's credit card debt or, you know, inability to pay bills, or you're not making enough money and you don't check your bank account regularly, and you're not sifting through your credit card expenses, and you don't know where your money's going and where it's coming and how much is coming in, right, in your personal bank account, mm-hmm. right? It's really hard to start making a headway, right? And so I think like a lot of people who have money issues generally have like a mindset where it's like, I ignore it, it'll go away, right? And we see so many gym owners who've just literally ignored certain key areas of their business. There's 6 key areas of any small business, right? Leadership, marketing, sales, operations, product, and finance. Okay. You have to pour into each one of them to some degree. Now, if you're a product-based company like yours, Dave, maybe the product knob needs to be turned up a little bit more, right? Mm-hmm. You're a service-based company like us, right, where it's client service facing, right? Maybe the operational side and needs to be turned up a little bit. We have to have really strong operational systems around intake, client life cycles, customer service, reactivation, those types of things, right? So every business is a little bit different, but all businesses have those 6 key seats. And it's amazing to me, so many gym owners who come in and they've put very little into 3 or 4 of them, or they're trying to do everything. So again, if there's, you know, if you divide 6 by, you know, 100%, you're somewhere in the 17% mm-hmm. range. So mm-hmm. you're giving me 17% of your effort in marketing, 17% of your operations, right? And that's usually a failing system. So I want to be able to delegate that. So we're going to teach people how to delegate that. operate that. And look, coming to our events, we want it to be fun too. So we do some culture building stuff. We got a great guy, Tony. Shout out to Tony Smith up there at the Garage Gym. And Tony's got a couple gyms up in Windsor, Canada. And Tony was a SWAT team leader for a decade. He was a SWAT team captain and team leader for a decade. He does a lot of like team building stuff with us. So he comes out. He's going to get everybody moving and shaking on day 2. So he's going to lead a training session and like a team building workout. It was cool. We did some fun stuff with him last year. He had it was all like physical development, but it was all physical stuff, but it was all like problem solving too. So it was super cool. You know, he works some of his, mental mind fucks on everybody, which is a lot of fun to get people's juices flowing. We do awesome catered lunch both days. We're going to have like some great sponsors there that are people that we do business personally with, right? So a lot of the vendors and people that we do businesses like Elite FTS is sponsored, and so that like that. And then we take everybody out for a great, like the Canopy Hotel has a really awesome like rooftop in Old Town Scottsdale. We rent out the whole rooftop. We have a nice like cocktail party social, and everybody, and that's where the best conversations have, because everybody's kind of loose, and we tell everybody get dressed up, like, have some fun. It's turned into a fun event. This is our 3rd year doing it in Scottsdale. So a lot of the people who are returning in our group are bringing their families out and stuff. So it's like a nice little 1-2 punch. Hey, I'm going to get 2 or 3 days of world-class education and inspiration from the Business of Strength and the guys at Varsity House, and then I'm going to stay for a couple of days with my family. And there's, obviously Scottsdale, if you've ever been out there, you got beautiful resorts, you got great golfing, hiking, stuff like that. So, we've created a community. Our business consulting group is powerful. There's some heavy hitters in there. You're getting everything from the startup gym to the person who's got a multi-million-dollar business. Like some of the people in the group have multiple gyms and other businesses too. So great entrepreneurs. And regardless of what the actual curriculum is, you're going to walk away with a blueprint of success for hiring, developing, and scaling your employees. But you're going to surround yourself, you're going to build connections with some world-class business leaders. And for me, that's always been the biggest thing. Like, I never lost contact with Pat after I went to that seminar in 2010, right? We've had a business coach in some way, shape, or form ever since then. When I was training at various training workshops and mentorships, I stayed in connection with those people. Same like I did with you, same like I did here. We come full circle 20 years after coming out here in 2005 to a workshop, where one of the things I took from Alwyn Cosgrove was building an internship. And when a year later we opened the gym, I was like, we need an internship, and I have this I'm at the college, so it's like a no-brainer. So all those things combined, that's again, that if we're talking about interns to all-stars and how that transformed our business, part of that started here 20 years ago, right? So you could be that person. You come out to Arizona, you get that one thing that changes everything.
And that's how I just hit 30 years, by the way. I sent me a text a few days ago. That's like the 1%.
Yeah.
That makes it 30 years.
Yeah, how many? Exactly. Like we're 20, he's 30. I mean, maybe Mike Boyle's approaching 30. Like he's got to be in that range. Mark Verstegen still doing it. I don't know what his involvement is in athletes' performance these days. Now Axios, but
Parisi,
Bill Parisi was still doing it. So I mean, there's only a handful, because as an industry, even though strength training has been around for a long time, the profession of having professional private sector strength and conditioning facilities is not that old, right? Maybe a collegiate strength coach, the Soviets had strength coaches, but that's a different thing. That's a different thing. So
how can people find out about the event?
Go to bosretreat.com, BOS Retreat, and we got a special discount that we put out for anybody listening to the Table Talk podcast. It's VIP $250, so you could save $250 on that. So that takes the price down from $699 to basically $450. And for $450, you come out for 2 days, lunches, dinner, cocktail party, 2 awesome days of learning at a beautiful place with great entrepreneurs, and you're going to walk out of there with a head swole full of information.
We have a link in the description, all the other contact information in there as well. Any final thoughts from you guys?
Just thanks for having us back here. Like I said earlier, I mean, this is a highlight and a full circle moment for me. Having the opportunity to be here a second time is, if you can, this is, it sounds cliched to say, but like this once upon a time was a dream, and now we're kind of living through that. And,
for sure,
it's really humbling to be part of it, but you said like full circle on the show, like, hey, you guys are at 20 years and, I'm hungry for the next 20. You just said Alan hit 30. It's like, we're going to hit 30. So I really appreciate the opportunity, Dave.
Same. I've always respected you, Dave, and looked up to you as especially in the realm of strength when I was getting started. There was only a handful of guys that I was really looking towards for information and education, and you were always one of those. So I've read your manuscripts on conjugate training dozens and dozens of times, trying to decipher what that code, what the secret code was. So I appreciate that. Yeah, the codex. I appreciate that, and obviously I appreciate obviously my business partner Dan, who's been an exceptional right hand man for going on 20 years. And for anybody listen, if you want to go fast, go solo. You could have a great business on your own and do your own thing and keep it small and keep it close to your chest. But if you want to go far and you're looking for that, you're looking for real growth, expansion, multiple facilities, and the proverbial freedom that all entrepreneurs kind of think they want and need and seek at the beginning, you have to build a team. So, and we're going to help you do that in September.
All right. Thank you, guys. It's been great, and we're done.
Thank you so much.
All content you see on this channel and at elitefts.com is created by, take a guess, Elite FTS. If you want to help support the content, head over to elitefts.com and pick up literally anything that you need to be able to get more jacked and strong.